Welcome back, aliens. My name is Navin Reddy, and in this video we'll talk about Django. The Django. Django is a free and open source web application framework. Now you will say, okay, we know about free part, we know about open source part, but what is a framework? Now, framework is a combination of certain components and packages. Of course, right, if you want to build some complex application, there are certain things you need ready-made. Example, if you want to build web application, you don't want to do everything from scratch. It will be time-consuming, right? So we will be using a framework here. Now, Django is not the only framework available. The moment you say web app, we have certain frameworks available. One of them is, or one of the famous one is Django. But why we have to learn Django there? Now, Django, as we know, is a web application framework. That means you can build web application. But hold on, our websites are so important, of course, right? If you talk about any business, they need their own online presence. In fact, most of the virtual solutions which we use nowadays are web applications. Example, if you want to buy something online, we have Amazon, we have Flipkart, we have eBay. If you want to book a cab, we have Uber, right? We have so many applications available which are based on web. So if you want to build them, you will be using Django there. But the moment you talk about websites, we know that you can build a website with the help of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So basically, we use HTML to design the page. You can think of HTML as the makeup for you. Now then we have CSS. If you want to improve your design, if you want to have that uniformity in the design, that's where you will use CSS. So we have HTML, CSS for designing. To make your website interactive, we can use JavaScript. So yes, we use HTML, CSS, JavaScript in the front end. What about the backend part? What if you want to make your website as a dynamic website? Example, let's say if you go to Facebook, everyone will get different feeds. You will not see the same message which everyone is saying, right? So your feeds will be different from them. If you go to Amazon, you can buy stuff online, you can pay, you can transfer amount online. And all this thing needs certain operations or certain processing done on the backend side. And that's where we need a language which will work on the backend. But which one? So we have certain options there. We have Java using, if you heard about servlets, we can do that there. We have PHP, we have ASP, we have Python. But hold on, how can we do that in Python? And that's where we have Django. So you can use Django to build web application, the backend part in Python. Okay, as I mentioned before, Django is not the only web framework available, but it's quite famous there. Now, when it comes to web application, one thing is very famous, which is MVC. Now, it doesn't matter which language you learn, maybe Java, PHP, or ASP. We have this thing common, which is MVC, Model View Controller. Now, basically, we do that so that we can separate the concerns. We have model for data, we have view, the HTML format which you see on the screen, and then we have a controller which will control these operations. In fact, we have a separate video on what is MVC, but then in general, when you say MVC, it will help you to build a good web application. But in Django, we have something similar to MVC, not exactly MVC, which we normally call as MVT or MTV, doesn't matter. So that MVT, which is Model View Template. So basically in MVT, we are replacing controller with view, and we are replacing view with template. Again, how that works, we'll see that later in the practical video. But then Django basically follows MVT. So if you have worked on MVC on different language, don't worry, it's almost same, but with some changes. But why to choose Django when you have other web frameworks available in Python? The first reason, Django is fast, which simply means if you want to build something, you should not be spending much time in just for the configuration. So Django will help you to build application faster. Second one, the number of components available. Now think about this, if you want to record a video, you need certain components with you, right? You need a camera, you need lights, you need a mic. In the same way, if you want to build a web application, you need login, you need database connectivity. And all this thing comes bundled in Django. That's an advantage and drawback as well. Advantage is you have everything with you. The drawback is you have everything on you. The third one is security. Now, if you are building an application where a user will interact, of course, they will be sending their data and you want to secure them. You want to secure your users. So Django will provide you that security. And the fourth one is scalability. What if in future your website scales, you want to have multiple users, you want to have more features? So Django will give you that option as well. And that's the reason you should be learning Django now. So Django is interesting. So if you have done your Python course before on this channel, now you can also learn Django because that's the next step you can take. To work with Django, we have to install Django first, and unfortunately, we don't have a setup here. Now, when you say you want to install Django, of course, you have to be specific with the OS you're working with, because for different type of OS, we have a different setup for Django. If you are using a Linux-based OS or if you are using Mac, they have almost the same step. But in Windows, we have a different settings to work with. Now, in this series, we are going to start with Windows for various reasons. The recording software which we are using it works well on Windows, and most of the people are using Windows. I will still suggest you to move from Windows to Linux to enjoy programming. But just to get started, let's start with Windows. Of course, the coding part will remain same, doesn't matter which OS you're working with. So let's get started. First of all, you need a setup. Now, if you want to work with Django, as we mentioned, Django is a web framework for Python. That means if you want to work with Django, you need a Python setup. Now, if you have seen my Python series, we have done the Python setup there, and then we have learned so many things, right? So if you have done those things, if you have done the setup, you don't have to install Python again. It's there in your machine. But what if you don't have a Python setup? So that's where you will install it. Now, when you say you want to install something, there is one little question which is about the version. Which version we are going for? So for Django, we are going for version 2. To be specific, it is 2.2. Of course, if you are watching this video after some time, you will be having some new versions. But don't worry, at least for 2x, they will not be having any major update. So that you can just check that on the documentation. Now, what type of Python setup you need? So if you want to work with Django 2.2, you need a latest version of Python, which is more than 3.4, I guess. So you just have to go to Google, just search for Python download. That's the website you have to go and click on that. Now, once you come to this website, you can see we have an option of download Python 3.7.3, which will surely work. It is more than 3.4, right? But you have to also check one more thing, which is the type of Windows you're working with. Is it 32-bit OS or is it 64-bit OS? And based on that, you can do the setup. So download the version which you have with you. Now, so this is 64-bit OS. I'm downloading that. So once you got setup with you, you just have to go to downloads. So you just have to click on the setup which you got downloaded. So you have to make sure if your Windows version is 64, just do that. Okay, 64 OS. And then you have to also make sure that you do this. You have to say add a Python in your path so that you don't have to do that setup later. So just check that, and here click on install now. It does take some time. Okay, so it says setup done for Python. Click on close. Now, once you got your Python installed, how do you verify it? Best way, open CMD, and that's your CMD prompt here. Okay, so here we have to check for the Python version. So the way you can do that is by saying Python --, you have to say version. Now it will give you the version of Python which you have, which is 3.7.3. The next thing you need is pip. Now pip is an installer manager for Python. So when you install Python, you will get pip as well. So just simply say pip, and let's check the version of this as well, and it should be 19.1 or 19.0.3. Both works. So you can see I have 19.1, the latest version. Now, once you got Python with you, once you got pip, we have to also check for Django. Of course, we don't have a Django setup. The way you can verify that is by saying Django-admin version. That's the Django command you can use, and you can see it says there is no Django available. So of course we have not installed it yet. So we got Python, we got pip. Let's install Django. Now if you install Django here, it will be available for the entire machine. Okay, so what if you want to have a different configuration for Django for different projects? So let's say if you're working with multiple projects, you want to have a different set for Django there. So just imagine from the entire system, you are creating an isolated space for your projects, so which will not be affecting the other projects which you have. And the way you can do that is by installing a virtual environment wrapper. So let's do that. So the command is pip install virtual env wrapper -win, and you just have to say enter. So it will install the virtual environment for you, and that's done. You can see we got the setup. So once you got this setup for the environment, we have to actually create the environment, because this will not give you the environment. This will just install the wrapper or the environment wrapper. So we have to create an environment here. The way you can do that is by saying it's mk virtual env space, And you just have to give any name to it. So time I will say test because I'm testing it. And you will say enter. So it does take some time, and so you can see we got our environment. So what we have done is we have installed Python, and then we have installed a virtual environment wrapper, and then we have actually created the environment. So the environment name here is test, a small environment where you can work. And you can also see it says test here. So just before your command, we have test there, which means we are into environment. Now once you are in the environment, now we have to install Django. Let's do that. And is it difficult? Of course not. We have a simple command here. So we can simply say pip install Django. I know we are working with command prompt and some people don't like it, but come on, you're a programmer, right? This is something you should be love doing. So we have pip space install space Django, and it will install Django for you. Simply say enter. Now based on your internet speed, based on your system speed, it will take some time. And that's done. You can see it says installed Django 2.2. This is what we wanted. In fact, you can actually check the version now. So you can say Django -admin version. So you can see we got oh, something went wrong. Yeah, so we got 2.2. So that's the version which you are working with. Okay, but what if I open CMD again and if I check, do we have Django available here? And you can see it says Django is not available. So that's the thing. So Django is there only in our environment. It's not there for the system. And that's what we want, right? We don't want to disturb the entire system just for our project. So we have the environment where we have Django available. So we got Python, we got Django, and now let's create our first project. Yes, that will be done using command line itself. Okay, but then how will you do it? Now, we can do that in a particular project. So what normally I prefer is I keep all my projects in one particular folder. So let's do that. Let me create a folder here. So we'll say mkdir, and we'll say projects. This is where I will have all my projects. So we got a folder which is projects, and let's move to that folder. So we'll say cd projects, projects, and now you can see we are in that project. So that's great. We got a folder and we are into it, and let's create our project here. Now to do that, we have to use a command again, but don't worry, once you will get used to it. So we'll say Django -admin. So whatever you want to do, you have to do with this thing. You have to say Django -admin, and you have to create a project which is start project, and I will give a project name. So that's the command. So Django admin, and then you have to say start project, and you can give any project name you want. So since we are Telusko, let's give a project name as Telusko itself, and we'll say enter. But before doing enter, let me just go to this project folder just to see if it is empty or not. So I'm in my C drive, and in user we have Telusko. Let's go there, and you can see here we have a projects folder which is empty, and the moment I say enter here, it will create a project for you. Let's go back to the folder, and you can see we got a Telusko project. Now what do you think, will it be empty or not? Let's double click here, and you can see it's not an empty folder. We have a manage Python file. I don't know why we need this. Let's see that later. And then we got a Telusko folder in which you have 4 different files. We'll talk about these things later, what exactly these things are. But as of now, the important file here is manage. Okay, to access that manage, first of all, we'll navigate to the project which we have created. So the project name is Telusko. So we can see we are in Telusko now. And if I say ls, that's Linux. If I say dir, you can see we have a folder which is manage.py. So we have this file. And then in Telusko as well, we have settings file, which is important. We have URL. We are building a website, right? So of course in the website you will be having a lot of URLs. So this will be used to handle that. This is something which will be used to deploy your project on the production server, because while you're learning stuff, you will not be working on the production server, you'll be working on a development server, the testing server basically. So we'll be using this. We don't actually use init, so we'll not talk about that. Okay, so we got our project, we are into that project now, but what next? We have not done any coding as of now, but still you can run the project, this particular project, and you can run this on a particular server. Of course, you need a server, right? Django says, hey, don't worry, since you are installing Django, we will also give you a lightweight server. And to access that, we have to say Python, and we have to use a file which is manage .py. We have seen this file before. And then the command we have to use is run server. And the moment you say enter, you can see you got your server up and running without any errors. It also says some different stuff. We'll talk about that later. In fact, in the theory video, we have talked about MVT, right, which is model view template. In model, it works with database, right? It's handle data. That's why it is giving you those warnings. But as of now, let's ignore them. What is important is it says your server is started at this IP address. So this is your local host address basically, and the port number is 8000. Of course, you can change this port number. But I will just go here. I will say 127.0.0.1:8000, and you can see this is your Django homepage. Okay, why we are getting this? Why not our own project data? Because we have not done any coding as of now, and that's why you're seeing this. If you want to experiment, you can simply click on, you can see below we have tutorials, a polling app. You can just go there. It will show you the steps how to get a project. You know, I just love documentation part here. So you can follow this documentation just to learn more. So that's how you do the setup for Python, for Django, and we have created our first project without any coding of course. In the last video, we have seen how do you set up Django in your machine, on Windows at least. And then now let's write a code, because in the last video we have just created the project and then we were running a server, a lightweight server which Django provides. It was running, so you can see this is the code which we have done. We entered this command which is Python manage.py, which is your management file, and run server, which will run the server. And then you just have to use any browser which you like. I'm using Chrome here, and you just have to enter the IP address. Now this is the IP address which is basically localhost, and the port number is 8000, and we are able to run the server, and then we got the output as well. But then we don't want this. We want something extra, right? We want to build a web application. That's what we do, right? So when you say you are using Django, it means you want to build a web application. Okay, now there are two types of web application we can talk about. We have static pages, and then we have dynamic pages. Now, all the websites which we use nowadays, some of the pages which you visit are static pages, which means everyone will see the same page. Dynamic pages are different for everyone. Example, if I go to Facebook, in fact we have talked about this example. So if I go to Facebook, I will see my own feeds. I will see my friend's feed. You will not see my friend's feed, right? You will get your own feeds there. So if I go to my bank account, I will see my own bank balance, not your bank balance. So basically we have a dynamic content there. Now when you say you want to build static content, we can use HTML, CSS, JavaScript, done. But the moment you say you want to make it dynamic, you want to do some processing, that's what we are doing here. So let's make a simple web application. Okay, when I say simple, we are going for the basic. You know what we do when you learn how to get a web page? You write hello world, right? That's what we'll do now. I know you are expecting something big, but the thing is, here we want to learn Django. We don't want to learn the complex programming at this point. We know Python, so we can write big applications, but now we have to understand the framework. So let's build something using which you can print hello world on the page. Yes, you can do that in HTML as well, but let's make it dynamic here. Okay, so for that, what you do is you have to use some sort of IDE. Now, basically, when you say IDE, we can also use a notepad to type the code. Okay, that's completely fine. You can use Sublime because that's a lot of people use. Here, we are going to use Visual Studio. You can download Visual Studio by going to Google. So when you search for Visual Studio download, this is what you will get. Just go to their website and you can download. In fact, every new version, they are providing amazing features. So just try it out, one of the best IDE available for programmers now. But again, the community version is free. If you want to go for professional version, you have to pay for it. But at least at this point, we are happy to work with the free version. It works well. So just have to download that and you have to install simple steps. Now in this machine, I already have Visual Studio, so let me just open that. So you can see we have Visual Studio here. This is how it looks like, dark theme. You can also go for a light theme. It's also available here. Depend upon, some programmers normally prefer black or dark theme. YouTubers or the content creators, they prefer white theme because the recording works well. Okay, so now once you have Visual Studio, we have to open the project. Now, if you remember in the last video, we have done that. We have created the project Telusko. So let's open that folder. So just have to go to the folder projects. Remember, we have created this folder projects, and inside this project, we have a Telusko project which we have created using command line, of course. Select that Telusko and click on open. This is what you will get. So you will get your project here, which is Telusko, and inside this you can see we have a lot of files. In fact, we have talked about them before, but just to go for a quick recap, we have this manage.py, which is useful to manage your project. And then if you want to do some settings in your project, this is very important, the settings.py file. So if you explore this file, you can see we have a secret key, which is basically used for deployment in the server. And then we have a debug. So debug will give you a lot of information when you get stuck somewhere. And this is very important actually. So let's say if you are building a project and if you want to know what is happening behind the scene, just make debug equal to true and it will give you all the information. But make sure before deploying it on the server, just make it false, because someone can hack your machine and they can see all the logs. Okay, and then this is important. This is the installed app. So in your project, these are the apps which are already installed. Again, we'll talk about it later. We can have our own apps. So these are the middlewares which will help you for security purpose as well. We have a template. So you can see this Django template will help you to provide template stuff. What about database? Of course, right, if you are making a web application, you also want some database behind the scene, maybe MySQL, maybe Postgres or SQLite. So by default, it gives you SQLite, but you can also use Postgres there. And then we have some password stuff here for validation. So let's not focus on this file as of now, because we don't actually edit this file very frequently. So let's keep it there. But this is a very important file. Okay, and then we have URLs. So you can see we might be having only one URL here, which is for admin stuff. So that's it as of now. Let's create our first app. But hold on, you might be thinking, we got a project, right? Why we have to get a separate app? The thing is, in Django, what we do is we have a project. Like, let's say if I want to make a big web application, which will have a lot of features, the admin stuff, we'll be having some, let's say, e-commerce website. We can have product as a module. We can have shipping as a module. So we can have a different set. Those are different apps. And all these apps in the website will be provided in one particular project, which is your website in general. So login stuff will be one app, then showing the products will be one app. That's how. So let's create a simple project here. The way you do that is by going to our terminal. So you can see this is our terminal, and this is where you can type. So how do we create an app and what you will name it? So as of now, I just want to name it as Calc, because I love Hello World, and then the next example will be Calc. So let's create a Calc app. To do that, we have to type a command. So you have to say Python manage.py, that's the file we are using, and then you have to mention the name of your app. So as of now, we'll go for Calc. The moment you say enter, we got an error. The problem is now we are using a different command prompt, right? I was not expecting this, but then we are using a different command prompt, right? Initially, we were using the Windows command prompt. Now we are using it through Visual Studio. And then if you remember, we have to also set the virtual environment. So the virtual environment we were using here is test. So we have to use that. So I will close this and we'll use test. So how do you use our environment? So you have to say work on test. So now we are in test. Now we have to fire a command. So we have to say Python manage.py. Oh, we have forgot one more thing. So you have to say start app. That's what you do. So you have to say start app and you have to mention Calc. The moment you say enter, now you can see on the left hand side, we got a Calc. This is basically your app. So this is your project Telusko and this is your app. Now if you can see, we have some different files there. We have a settings here, but we don't have settings here, because this settings is for the project and every app will have its own stuff. Example, let's say if you talk about the app, we have some admin stuff here. We'll not be doing that as of now, but we have admin stuff, we have apps. This name is important. Just look at this name. We are creating a class named as calconfig. We are going to use it. Then we have models. Now, if you talk about Django, if you want to build a web application, of course you want to work with database, right? And in Django, we have this awesome concept named as ORM. So we'll talk about that later, but then this model will be used for that, or basically it is used to hold data. And then we have tests. So if you want to do some test cases, if you want to test your application, this is how we can do it. And then we have views. Remember when we send a request, we have talked about MVT, where views will handle your request. So that you can do that here. Okay, but we want to build Hello World, right? So how will you do that? That we'll see in the next video. So in this video, we have talked about how to create an app in the project in Visual Studio, of course. That's what we are using here. And then we have seen the files. In the next video, we'll run this code. So in the home page, so example, if I go to home page and if I refresh, I should be getting something like Hello World, something like that. This is not working now, but we'll make it work. We want hello world here at the home page. In the last video, we have created the app inside our Visual Studio. So we got a project inside which we got a small app named as Calc, which is doing nothing. And let's make it work. So what we wanted is we wanted to get the home page, right? We want to see the home page saying hello world or whatever you want. Now the way you can do that, so to understand how exactly thing will work, we have to understand how Django navigates stuff. So the moment you request to the Django server, the moment you request to your URL, which is localhost:8800, it will search for the URLs mapping. So what will happen is you are asking for the home page, right? So it will search for the mapping which is with slash. So basically home page is referred with slash or empty. If you want to refer to a particular page, let's say website/documents or website/products, that's where you will see all the products page. So home page normally referred as empty or slash. So here we have to do something with this URL. But then this URL is for the entire project, not for a specific app, right? We want to work with this particular app, which is Calc. So in this Calc, we need a file which is urls.py, its own URL mapping. So let's click here and we have to search for urls.py. This is where you have to provide the mapping. But what should be the code? So if you go back to the project, main project URL, so you can see we have these two things here, which is path, sort of which I only need this form. In fact, we can just type it there. Let's type it. So we have to say from django.urls import path. We want to import the path. And then here, if we need one more, we need views as well. So we'll say from all import views. Okay, but how will you provide the mapping? So that's where you have to use a list of mappings. Okay, you might be having multiple URLs to map with, right? So we'll say URL pattern. So we'll have a list here. So this is where you have to do the stuff. So since we'll be having multiple lines, let me say enter. And this is where you will specify the mapping. So let's specify only one path as of now. We can add later as well. So we can say path. Now for which path? So you can also say slash here, which is for home, or you can keep it empty. That's your choice. Give a comma. So whenever someone calls for the home page, that's what we are doing here. So whenever someone calls for home page, we need to handle it with some function. Now, of course, the navigation is a process, right? It should be done with the help of some function. So we'll call that function. But what is the function name? As of now, we'll simply say views.home, comma, and we can have the name as home itself. Or you can also have index.html, right? That's what we do. So we normally have our page, home page name as home or index.html. Both will do here. Let's stick to home. So when you click on this views, if you get any error there, it will ask you to install this extension. Let's click on install that. It should not take much time. Okay, I think it's done. Let's go back to CMD, our original prompt. So you can see we are getting an error here for views. But why we got the error? It's because the moment you say for this URL, you are handling this with the help of a home function. Unfortunately, we don't have this function. Where you will define this? And that's where we have this view module. So just go to views.py and here we have to create that function. Okay, what function? So the moment you say function, you have to set def and the function name would be home. That's what we have used there. And this home will accept a request. So that's what you get from the client, right? So when a client sends a request, you will get in a request object and then you can simply return. Okay, but how will you return data? So I want to return hello world. So what we are saying is whenever a client requests for home or the home page, I want to return hello world. But then this will not work directly because we have to send that in a response format. If you are getting data in a request format, you have to give back in a response format. And if you want to use that, we have to use a special thing here, which is HTTP response. Let's give a bracket here. Okay, so what we are doing now is HTTP response. Okay, but we got an error. The error is, see, whenever we use this HTTP response stuff, we have to also import it, right? Because it's not imported here. So we can do that is by saying from django.http and we have to import HTTP response. So this HTTP response belongs to this package or module named as HTTP. Okay, so that's done. So you can see we got a function. If you go back to urls.py, okay, it should remove the error now. What's wrong? Okay, you can see it's solved. So we got views there as well. We got views.home, it is working. But will this work? So you can see we got a calc as an app and then we have edited two files because this will handle the mapping. So whenever you call the home page, it will call this particular function, which is home. And then in this views, it will print hello world. But will this work? Unfortunately, let's try. why to say unfortunately. In fact, I will be creating an extra, or maybe I will use a second prompt here. Okay, so you can see I'm using 2 prompts. In fact, we got 3 prompts here. So here in the new prompt, I'll be starting the server because the server is not on. So if you refresh, you can see we don't have the server started. Let's go back and let's type the command, and we all know the command now, right? So which is python space manage.py, and you have to mention run server. Okay, so once we have this server running, let's go back and let's say refresh. Okay, you can see we are still getting the default homepage. We are not getting hello world. Something is wrong here. So think about this. We are doing all the mapping inside the urls.py, which is our file, right? We are not doing anything in the project file because this is the main file which controls everything. So we have to mention that entry here as well. Not the exact entry, not all the entries, but just one entry. We have to mention, hey, you have to also use the URL file of the app. And the way you can do that is by saying path. So for the home path, we are using it. Let's give a comma. And then if you want to use that particular file, which is urls.py of calc, you have to mention that here with the help of a function named as include. And in this, you have to mention calc.urls. Okay, you have to mention that file. That's it. It should work now. Oh, but there's one issue. You can see we got an error here. The error is of comma, is it? Yeah, so there was a comma issue. So you can see we got the error for include now. But why? Is because we are using a function without importing it. So this is something you have to remember. You have to also import it. So you can simply give a comma after path, and here you can mention include. And our job is done. That's it. I hope this will work now. Let's go back to the browser and say refresh. Okay, so the server is not running. Let me run the server again. So you can see we got hello world. So it's that simple, right? Just to go for a quick recap what we have done. I know we have not done something much, but at least we are able to generate our content dynamically without using that static HTML page. Right? So if you can do this, we can do whatever you want, right? We can fetch data from database, we can do calculations as well, right? But we'll do that later. But as of now, what is happening? The moment you send a request search for this file where you're saying, hey, if you are searching for the home page, you have to look for calc URLs. And in this calc URLs, what we are doing is we are saying, okay, for the home page, you have to call this function which is home, and inside this home, we are saying, hey, return hello world. So whatever you mention here, maybe the variables as well, because this is a function, you can write variables, right? So you can do some processing and you can return. So that's how you can create your first app. Now till this point, we were able to print hello world on this screen, and that to the page we have created is not a static page, right? So what we have done is the moment you send a request to a page, so what page I'm talking about, so this is what I was talking about. The moment you go to your browser and when you say localhost or the IP address :8000, you will get hello world, because this is your home page, right? So in your Django, what we are doing is the moment you send a request, so it will go to the URLs of your project where you have mentioned that whenever someone calls for the admin, this is what it will handle. But we are not doing that. We want to handle for the home page, and that will be handled by calc.urls, which is here. So we have one more url.py in our app. Now the question is, why don't we do everything in this URL? Because we can have multiple apps, right? And every app will have its own URL, and it makes sense to do that because it will be isolated. So if you touch one thing, it will not affect the other one. It will be easier to manage. So in the urls.py, you can see we are saying again path, and then we are saying for the home page, we have a function named as home. So if you go to views.py, which is your Python file for views, here we are saying this is a function home. The moment it gets called, you just have to send a response, which is a HTTP response, and you have to send hello world. And that's why we are able to see that hello world. But hold on. If you talk about the real projects, if you talk about the actual websites, you don't actually print only one text, right? You might want to print multiple text. You want to print an image, or you want to do some amazing UI style there. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that here. We are not going to create a good looking website. We just want to create a simple web page. Even when you say web page, it will have certain HTML tags, right? For the title, for the BG color. I mean, if you want to change the background color, I know how to do that. But okay, so you can change the background color, and then you can also have some amazing font, right? If you want to use a big heading, small heading. So of course that should be done in HTML. Now how will you use HTML here? So let's say I want to increase the font size of it, or maybe I want to set it H1. So yes, you can do that. You can actually type H1 here. So before hello world you can say H1, and after hello world you can say H1 close. This is perfectly possible. But is it logical? Because if you go to browser, it will surely work. You can see refresh, you got hello world in a big font. But what if you want to create a big page? I mean multiple tags. So it doesn't make sense to type all the tags here. So what we should do? We should be creating a separate page, okay? A home page which will have a lot of HTML tags. But don't you think the moment you create a new HTML page, it will be a static page? Once you specify the content, we cannot change it. It will be static, right? We want to make it dynamic. And that's where in Django, we have this amazing concept called templates. So you can imagine in template, what we can do is we can have a HTML page, okay? And in that, we can have a dynamic content. The layout will be fixed. You can change layout, or you can make it static, that's your choice. So imagine the background color will be fixed, everything, the entire layout will be fixed, but the data will change. And yes, that is possible. So in Django, we have a concept of DTL, which is Django Template Language. So we have one more option there. We can also use Jinja, but again, we'll talk about that later. As of now, let's focus on templates. In fact, if you go to settings, we have seen this, right? We have templates here, and here we are using Django templates, right? So using this, you can actually achieve that. Now to see that, we have to actually create a page, right? So where you will create a page? Normally, you can create a page outside the app, or in general the root directory. So that's a root directory here. So I will just come back here. So I just want to create a folder where I will put all the pages. Now what name I should be giving it? So you can give any name to it. You can say pages, you can say templates. So that's your choice. You can have anything. So I will say templates here, since we are using DTL. In this templates folder, I want to create a file which is home.html. So let's do that. So I will click on that add file here, and we'll say home.html. And this is where you will print hello world. But this time, of course, I will be using h1 tag, and I will print hello world, but just to get a different text, because you might even not be knowing that something has changed. So what I will do is I will simply say some exclamation mark, because in the actual output here we don't have exclamation marks. So now we know when things are changing, right? So you can see we got hello world, and then at the end we are getting some exclamation marks. So how will you call this home.html? So for that we have to do some changes, because if you go to your browser and if you say refresh, nothing is happening, right? So the first thing you have to change is your setting file. So if you go back here and if you say settings, this is where you have to do some changes. Okay, now what changed? So you have to change this dirs file, which is path, which is actually a directory file. So you have to specify the path of the template, because where you will search it, because the moment you load this application, your Django should know where you have all the templates. So let's specify the path here. To do that, you have to say os.path.join, and in this you have to specify, in the bracket you have to specify two things. First, the base directory. So you can simply say base dir, and here you have to mention the folder name where you have all the files. So you can say we have those things in templates, and your job is done. So you have specified the path. Now, so you have to also change your views.py file, because here we are saying HTTP response and we are returning the text. We don't want to do that. We want to call the HTML page. And to achieve that, instead of saying response, HTTP response, we have to say render, because you have to render your template. Because template is just a file and it might have some dynamic content. So you have to merge it, right? You have to merge your static content with dynamic content, and that is called as rendering. But we are not doing that as of now, right? We don't have dynamic content. We'll do that, but of course we have to use render, because that's how thing works. So in this render, we have to first pass the object of request, because again we'll use this request object later. As of now, let's pass the request object, and then you have to also mention the page you want to call. So of course we want to call home.html, and that's it. Your job is done. So if I go back to my browser, I hope this will work. Let's refresh. Can you see that we got a dynamic content? We are calling that home.html, and you can also see that we got exclamation marks there. But hold on, we are talking about dynamic content, right? What if you want to use dynamic content here? So let's say instead of saying hello world, I want to print hello Naveen here. Is it possible? Yes, we can do that, but I want this name to be dynamic. So what we can do is, instead of having this name on this page, let's go to view. Now this is your Python code, right? So you can have you can do any operation here. So maybe you can also fetch this name from database. So if you want to do that, you can simply pass the name here as well. So you can say, you can use a curly bracket here and specify the name, give a colon, and the name we are passing is, let's say, Naveen. So I want to use this name in my HTML. So we are passing a JSON format here, or a data. You can simply say, go back to your home.html, and here we want to use that stuff. So to achieve that, we can simply use two curly brackets, and here we can specify a name. Now that makes it dynamic. So I will talk about this, what those curly brackets means, but let me just check if it is working. And it's working. Can you see that we got Naveen? The amazing thing is if you go back to your views and if you change the name, again this name can be from anywhere. It can be from the internet, it can be from live streaming. So let's say if you are sending huge amount of data, you can pick up any name and you can print it here. As of now, let's keep it any name. So let's go with Kiran. And now if I go back, let's refresh. So you can see we got Kiran. We are not changing anything in the home.html, we are doing that in Python code, right? That's what when you say dynamic content. Now this curly brackets here, it simply means that the code which we are writing here is dynamic, okay? So this is the Jinja pattern, what you say, or Jinja template. Now, if you are coming from JSP or PHP, we have the same concept there as well. Now this is only for the variable. Can we use actual code? Can we do operations here? And the answer is yes. You can also do operations here. But how to do that, we'll see later. So I hope you are enjoying this. We have just created some dynamic content using templates. So this is your DLT, which is Django template language. Also, we can also use Jinja. In fact, we have multiple engines. One is the Django template, which is by default. You can also use Jinja, but we'll see that later. As of now, this is working. So till this point, what we have done is we got this hello Naveen, which is, the name is actually coming from the Python code, which is in views.py. But now what I want to do is, let's say I want to print hello Naveen, but then if you create multiple pages, most of the pages will have the same theme, right? The layout, the color scheme will be same. What will change is data or the logic for those particular pages. So what if you can take out some unique thing and keep it somewhere? Maybe something like, I will go back to my template here, and I will create one more file and we'll call this as base.html. Now this is where I want to put the basic code which will be common for all the pages. And then in that block, in the body, we can have our own code. So what I'm talking about is, let me just create a basic layout. We can simply say exclamation and enter. You can see we'll get a code, the basic at least. And here I want to change the title. So title I want is Telusko. And then I also want to change the color. So I'm a big fan of changing colors. Okay, so I will say body BG color, and I love cyan. So okay, in fact, you can also, I don't know if you know this thing, you can also have your own name here. So just type cyan here and then that color I want. Now in this body, so all the pages which you will have, they will replace their content here. Example, if I talk about home.html, this data should go inside this base HTML. But how is that possible? To achieve that, again, we have to write a code here, and that too in DTL format, or you can say Jinja format. And to achieve that, we have to write curly brackets, and you have to enter 2%. This is what we normally do. Okay, this is where you have to say block content. So this will be a block where you can put your content. Okay, so when I say block, we have to also end it, right? So that's a block. And 20 block, we have to say end block. Okay, now you can see when I type this code, I'm able to actually see the color. So you can see there's a different color here. That means my Visual Studio Code is actually understanding the code which I'm writing. So the block and end block. If in your IDE, if it is coming in white color, you might have to add the extension. Now which extension? So you have to go to here, extension, and you have to add this Jinja extension. So just type Jinja here and say install, and that will be done. So when you say Jinja, it will ask you, it will give you an option of install. Just install that and reload. If it is asking for that, it will give you those things. Okay, now once you got your block here, we have to also go back in home.html, because I want to use this in my home.html. Because if you go back to my browser, if I say refresh, you can see we don't have those color, the cyan color. So let's go back to the code. Now if you want to include that here, again we have to use Jinja code here. So you have to extend that base.html. So you have to say extends in single quote base.html. And this part, which is hello, will go inside the body, inside the block. And to achieve that, we have to say block content, and here we have to end it. And that's it, your job is done. Let's verify if it is working, refresh, and can you see that we got cyan color and then we got this hello Kiran. Now if I go back, you can also have your name here. Let me say Ria. I hope this will work. Okay, Ria becomes black. Let's say Bindi. I don't know who is Bindi. So Bindi has, you can see red color. Normally Bindi comes in red color, but I don't know why it's here. So basically it works with the hash value or hexa value, so it will convert your text into hexa value. That's how it works. But stick to cyan and that should work, right? So this is how we can use the external files here in your code. So that's how you can use exclude. Now in the earlier video we have talked about how can we include the HTML in the new HTML with the help of Django code, of course, which is the extends, right? But then what I want to do now is I want to do some operations, because till this point we have not done any operation. We are talking about dynamic content. So when I say operation, we will do one of the simplest operation possible, which is addition of two numbers. I know we are talking about simple stuff, but then important is we have to understand the concept of Django, right? How everything works behind the scene, but not the actual code, because that's something we can make it complex, right? So what I will do is I will just go back to my home.html, and here, yes, we want to print hello Kiran or hello Naveen. Let's go back to Naveen so that we'll remember what the name we are going for. So let me say Naveen. So what I want to do is I want to create a form using which I can add two numbers. So the moment you say you want to get a form, you can simply say form and you can say action. Now let me just keep it blank. And in this form tag, I want two text field because I want to add two numbers, right? So let's say enter first number, and here we'll say input type text, and we can have a name to it. We can say num1. In fact, you can have any name, but let's stick to num1, and we'll say br so that it will come on new line. So let me just copy this code and say enter, and then here instead of saying first number, we want to have it as second number, and this one will become num2, and here we need a button. So I will say input type submit, and that's it. We got a form, and when you click on submit, it will add two numbers. It's not that simple, right? Because this is a HTML code. How can you simply add those two values here? Let's imagine this works, and when you're saying, hey, 2 plus 3 is 5, but when you will print it. So what I will do is I will create one more page which will be used to print the result. So I will say result.html, a simple page, and in this HTML I also want to have this extended format. So I will just copy this, copy and paste. In fact, we should be saying that as code reuse, right? Code reuse makes much more sense. And here we just want to have the end block, and now we just want to print this result.html. But will this work? Of course not, right? So what I will do is, first of all, I will mention, hey, whenever I click on submit, I want to add these two numbers. Now it will search for that add.html or something like that. So you have to go to views, and this is where you have to map it. Now how will you map it? So, not here. You have to go to URL and you have to map it here. So the map would be, so I will say path, whenever someone calls for add, because see, if you don't do this, if you remove this thing and if I go back to browser, now since we have a form, you can see it will give you the form, and if I say 5 and 6, it will, when you click on submit query, we got the error, we'll solve that, but look at the address bar. The URL which you are hitting here is add. So we need to handle this, and that's where we have to add a path for add, and then we'll say views dot, we have to say add, or we can have any method name or function name, and here we'll say name, and time being let's keep the same name as add. But unfortunately, you can see we got error here, we are missing comma. You can see we got error. So it simply says if you go to views, we don't have any function named as add. So we'll say def add. It will, of course, it will also accept the request. And here we have to say return render. Oh, we have not created the page yet, but let's do that. So I will say request, and the page I want to create is, we have a page result.html, right? If I go back to result.html, I'm not printing anything here. So let me just print result. Now let's see if that is getting called. Refresh. Okay, it's still loading. Something went wrong. I guess we got some invalid syntax here. So there's a problem with the path. Maybe I have to restart this server, is it? Okay, refresh. And you can see if I click on submit, so we got the result, but not the actual value, because we have not added those two values, right? So what is happening till this point is when you say URL, when you say add, you are getting add here. So formatting is working, it just went up. Ignore that formatting as of now. So when you say add, it is calling this add. So in this add, what we are saying is, hey, call result.html, but we also want to add those two numbers, right? So how will you do that? So to achieve that, we just have to go back to our views, and here we have to perform operation. This is a Python code, right? So you can perform the operations here. So let's go back, and now we'll simply say, so we have to first fetch the values, right? We have two values, and those two values are 5 and 6. Of course, you can pass any value, but that is getting stored in num1 and num2. To fetch that, I will simply use a variable here. We'll say value1 equal to, and to fetch the value, we can simply say request dot. So this is the request object we are using. So finally, we are using that object. Of course, right? Because as a client, when you send a request to the server, you're basically sending an object, and that object will have some values. So the value which you are passing here, which is num1, num2, is in that particular object, right? And when server send you value back, it will be in a format of response. So we can simply say get. Now we can have multiple values. So I want to fetch the num1, and here we'll say value2. This will be for request dot get, and this is for num2. Now once you got those two values, I want the result. So we can say res equal to value1 plus value2. We just have to add them, and once you have added them, we want to send it to the result, right? And the way you can send it, you can simply give a comma here, and you can use curly brackets. We have done this before, right? So I can say result colon res. So res is a variable in which you have a value, the output value, which I'm sending with a name result. So if I go back to result.html, this is where I want to print it. So I will say result colon, and if you remember, we can use this curly brackets for the name, and I can say result. Done. It's that simple, right? It's all about that flow. So if I go back to my page, and if I say refresh, click on submit, and we got the answer. So when you add 5 plus 6, you will get 56. That's weird. Okay, so what is happening is, if you go back to your view.py, you are adding these two values, right? But unfortunately, by default, the val1 and val2 are text or string, because that's what you're getting from here. It will give you text by default. We have to inform, hey, we don't want text, we want that in an integer format. So we have to convert with the help of int function, both the side. So now it will be int, because when you say string plus string, it will give you string, right? So 5 and 6, it will be getting concatenated. What we want to do here is we want to add them. So we want numerical values. Let's go back, refresh, submit. Oh, still it is getting the wrong value. So what is going wrong? Maybe I have to use a single quote here, but that should not be an issue. Let's go back, refresh. Oh, that was the issue. So you have to put that in single quote. So you can see we got the output as 8, and our job is done, right? So that's how we can add these two values. But then we have one important concept here is of get and post, because in this code we are actually working with get. But what is get, and how can we use post? So we'll see that in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed this video where we have added two numbers. In fact, just to give you a quick recap, in the home.html we got a form. We are asking for those two values. The moment you click on submit, the request will go to add. So in the URL mapping, it will check, okay, if the request is for add, I have to call the add function. And inside this add function, we are simply accepting the request, fetching the values, adding those two values, and calling result.html with the value. In result.html, we are printing the value. That's it. Now till this point, we have added two numbers, right? And that too with a form. And when you click on submit, the request goes to the server. That's where the processing will happen, and you will get the answer. And it works, right? But the thing is, when you talk about this HTTP protocol, it has multiple methods to work with. So whenever you send a request or you get a response, you are basically using HTTP protocol. Now when you send a request here, by default, you have a method which is get. So basically HTTP has multiple methods, the way we have get, post, put, delete. So here we are focusing on two methods, get and post. Now whenever you want to fetch a resource from a server, so basically let's say when you visit a link, when you say, hey, I want the image, that's a get request, because you are expecting something from a server. But what if you want to send something to the server? Maybe if you're filling a form and then you want to submit your data, that's where you are submitting data. That's why we say post, right? So post is for adding the new data to the server. Get is fetching the data. Again, we have another two, we have put and delete. Put is basically to update the resource or to update the data on the server. And then we have delete, and name itself says it's for delete, right? But here, what we should use, get or post. Now, technically, we are sending data to the server, right? We are passing two numbers. So it should be post, right? But then unfortunately, the code which we are using here is for get. But before going ahead, I have to switch to my virtual environment, and I have to also start this server because just before the video, I have restarted my machine. So let's do that quickly. Okay, so my server is up and running, and now let me just enter some values. So I will say 4, and let's say if I send 5, if I click on submit, the request type which we are using here is get. Now in get, what happens is you are actually sending the data on the address bar. So let's say when you search for Naveen Reddy, you can see you will get the results, right? But look at the address bar. It says www.google.com/search, and then you pass a query string, which is Naveen Reddy, right? So basically, when you want to fetch data, you also have to pass some data to the server. Now, when you search something like this on Google, it's completely fine, right? If someone sees the data in the address bar, because I'm just searching for something. But what if you are sending the username and password from this form? Example here, when I'm sending 4 and 5, it is actually going to the address bar, right? Now, since it is an address bar, it's not secure. We don't want to send our data in the address bar. Imagine your username and password. So to achieve that, we should not be using get, we should be using post. So that's one reason. Second one, maybe you want to send multiple data, not just 1 or 2. Maybe you have the entire form of 10, 20 fields. So you don't want everything to be coming on the address bar. And technically for submitting the data, you should always use post. So here, let's not use get, let's use post. But how will you do that? So the first step is go to your form and say, hey, method equal to post. So by doing that, you're saying, hey, I'm not using get, because by default, if you're not setting it, it is get. You're saying, hey, I don't want to use get, I want to use post. So just do that. But will this work? Just by saying post, will it work? Let's try. Let me just go back to my browser and say refresh here. Let's say 7 and 8, click on submit. Oh, we got an error. At least in the address bar, you don't have it, right? We don't have anything in the address bar there. But what's wrong? So it says CSRF verification failed. Now that's weird. So what happens is, in the world of internet, we have amazing things, right? We have amazing resources, we have amazing services, and then we have huge amount of user data. Now, yes, we have some valuable stuff online, and the moment you say something is valuable there, we have hackers, we have attackers, and then there are different attacking techniques available. So we have multiple attacking techniques, out of which one is CSRF. So we'll not be talking much about this attack. You can just go to Google and search about CSRF. It's a type of attack. You can just go search about it. Understand, it's very important for a web developer to understand this type of attack. So to avoid this, what Django says is, by default, Django gives you, so if I go to my settings.py, you can see in Django settings, we have a middleware in which one of the middleware is CSView middleware. So it simply says, hey developer, by default, I'm providing you this middleware, please use it. And then in our code, we are not using it. If you can see home.html, we are not using it here. So what can be done? Since it is compulsory for you, just go back to home.html, and here we'll say, hey, I want to use that token here. And the way you can do that is again by using Jinja code. So we'll say curly brackets and then percentage, and here we have to say CSRF token. So that's it. Basically, you're using a token here to send the data. Okay, now let's go back, and this time it should work. Say 8 and 7, click on submit. Okay, so we got a different error. This time we are not getting that CSRF. Now the problem is, it says multi-value dictionary key error. The problem is you are using post, but in the code, if you can see in the views.py, we are using get. So we should be using post here, not get. So we got post, save this file, go back here, and it should work now. Say submit, and it works. And see the address bar. We are not sending data in the address bar. So basically, it is done with the help of cookies. We don't say anything in the address bar. So that's how you can use post. So basically, when you want to fetch data, always use get. When you want to submit data, always use post. Now there's one important concept in Django, which is MVT or MTV. Now it is very similar to MVC on different web frameworks available, but in Django, we use MTV or MVT. Now it stands for Model View Template. But why do we need that? So let's start with a simple web page. So of course, right, as a user, you go to a particular website and you fetch a page. Now that page can be a static page because in a normal page we have two important things. One is the layout of the page and then the data as well. Now data is something which we want, right? As a user, we want to see a data, we want to use a data. But with that, we also need a layout. Of course, you will not go to a website where you don't have a layout. Even when you go to Amazon and if you see your order history, so you will see all the orders there, but then you get everything in a proper layout. Now that layout will be designed in HTML, CSS, or maybe front-end JavaScript, and the data will be coming from database. Or maybe you can have static content in the HTML itself, everything will be static. But what if you want a dynamic content? Example, as per the user, example on Amazon, if you see order history, you will see your order history, right? You will not see my order history. So data on that page is different for everyone. So basically when you visit a page, let's say order history on Amazon, everyone will get a different data. So that data is actually coming from database. So yes, data is important, the layout is important, and there is one important thing, which is the business logic. Of course, right, when you want to do something on the website, we normally refer that as web application nowadays. So in the web application, sometimes you perform some operations. You build your business logic. Example, let's say if you go to, again, Amazon, if you want to add a product in a cart, that's one process. So on the Amazon server, they will be doing some processing. Now we have to write that code somewhere. So basically we need three things: the data, the layout, and the logic. And to write, in fact, we can write everything in one page. So we can build a page where you will have the layout, where you will have the data, where you have the logic. But sometimes it's better to separate those things from one another. In fact, we call them as separation of concerns. So we have three concerns, we are separating them. And that's where in software engineering, we have different software design patterns. One of them is MVT. So MVT is Model View Template. Now, as name suggests, model is for data. Yes, so the data is coming from database, and that can be linked with the model object, right? So when you say model in your application, you might be having different entities, and every entity will have its own model object. Now that can be linked with database. Again, you will see the examples later. And then on the other hand, we have templates. Now this template will be normal HTML, right? In that HTML, yes, HTML, CSS, and front-end JavaScript, but it will also have DTL, which is Django Template Language. So let's say if you want to introduce some dynamic data in your page, that can be done with the help of DTL. So we will be having that layout and the DTL there. So this data will be coming from the model object, right? But who will link this? And how you will call all these things? You have to provide this navigation somewhere. So let's go back again. So let's say as a user, you want to fetch data. So you are sending a request. This request will go to your application, your web application. Maybe if you're using Django there, so it will go to Django framework. Now in Django framework, whenever you build a project, you will get a very specific file, which is URLs, right? If you remember, we have done that. So in the URLs, you do all the mapping, right? So from where you will get the request and then what will happen. So that navigation will be sent to the views. If you remember, in URLs, you do that. You say views dot something. So it will go to views. Now what is view? We have not talked about that. So the business logic which we want to write will be done in views. I know that's a bit tricky because normally when you say view, it should be a page, but that's not the case. In views, we actually write the business logic, right? And then these views will use the model object and the template. So what data has to be sent on the template will be decided by view, right? And the connection with the models will be done through view. And that's the importance of this model, view, template. And that's why we say it's a MVT framework, right? So it's quite useful to segregate your concerns, separating your concerns. Model will work with data, views will work with logic, and template will work with layouts. So that's about MVT. So just to recap, a user will send a request which will go to URLs. In the URLs, it will check, okay, we have to call views because that's what we do in the code. And inside this view, you will write the logic. Plus, you will also connecting your template and the model. So you will see all this example in the further videos. Now you can also relate the same concept with MVC. In fact, in other frameworks like Spring, we have MVC. In MVC, we have model, view, controller. So whatever is done in model in Django, same thing happens in MVC, which is M, the model. Then we have view. So the work of this template in those framework is done with view. and the view job will be done with controller. Not exactly, because in other frameworks we have to configure the controller as well. We don't have to do that in Django because it will be done by the Django framework. So they are quite similar, but with this main difference, which is in views, we don't control stuff, right? That's the thing about MVT. If you're getting confused, just ignore MVC, focus on MVT, model, view, and template. Now till this point, we were able to create a Django project, and then we have created an app, a simple app, which will add 2 numbers, and then we were able to do that, right? But the UI was not that good. So if you go back to the browser, you can see this is the type of UI which we are working with. But of course, when you are building a professional website, you will be having some amazing UI, right? Now there are multiple ways of creating a UI. You can create an entire UI from scratch. We have a different team for that. Maybe you have a great designer who can create a good UI. Or if you are a full stack developer, you can do it from start to end, the back end and the front end as well. But here we'll not be building anything from scratch. We will be using some existing templates. So if you go to Google, there are actually a lot of websites available which will give you templates for free, or you can buy them, right? And they're not that costly. But here, for this example, I'm going to use a free template. So let's download a simple template. So let's go to, in fact, I have already checked one template on the website, which is Travelo. So if you search for Travelo color lib, so this is a website where you can download this free template. Yes, they will not allow you to change the footer. So in the footer, you have to use their name or something. Your footer credits must be remaining in the place. So we'll not be changing it. So we'll be using this free template. So you can simply download that. So you can simply click on download, and it will download in your machine as a zip file. You just have to unzip it. Okay, so I've already done the unzip. So you can see this is the template which I've downloaded from the internet. You can simply open this index.html, and this is how it looks like. So they have this amazing UI available here. So basically this is for the travels. So you can simply go there and you can book your travel to Bali, Indonesia, Paris, wherever you want to go, and then they will give you cost as well. We want to use this page, or we want to use the design, but then you will say, hey, we are learning Django, right? Why we should focus on the static content? See, the idea is this is the UI, right? And then when you say you want to make a content dynamic, this is the content you have to make it dynamic. Maybe the images here, the names, the price, because these are dynamic stuff, right? So let's say in future, now you have 6 places. What if you want to have one more place? And that's where you will simply edit your database. In your database, you will add one more location, let's say Mumbai, and then you will set the price there, maybe let's say $1,000. And then you will set the data as well. Now all this data, the image will be coming from the database. So the link of the image, the price will be coming from database, and that too dynamically. You're not actually changing your HTML file at that point. So to achieve that database connectivity, we'll do that later, but as of now, I want to use this thing in my project. But there's a twist here. What happens is when you just copy this index.html, you have to also take care of the static files. Example, images. We have JavaScript files because all these things are very important for this layout, right? The animation effect which you are seeing there, the images, and then there are certain plugins, there are certain styles. We want all this in our project. Okay, so what we will do is let's copy this file. So let's copy this index.html in our project. Oh, but where? Maybe we should be creating a new project, new app, right? I don't want to work with calc anymore. So let's create a new app first. So let's go back here in the new command prompt. Oh, okay, so in the new terminal, I have to just move to Telusko. I have to work on test. So now I want to create a new app. So for that, I will simply say Python manage.py. Now we know how to create a new app, right? You can simply say Python manage.py, and then you have to say start app, and you have to name the app. So we'll go for Traveler because that's what we are building now. I'm not sure if they already have this website available online. I just went with this theme which looks suitable. So you can see we got another app here named as Traveler. Yeah. So this is what we want to use. This is where I want that HTML to be. To put that HTML, I will put that in templates. So let's get it here. Copy and paste in templates. So you can see in the templates we got it. And now if you want to access this page, we need to do some changes. The first change is if you go to URL, oh, in this Traveler, we don't have urls.py. Okay, so let's do that. I will, instead of typing it, let's copy the existing URL. So you can see we will be getting urls.py. There are certain changes. This time let's go for index. We can go for home as well. but let's do for index. So we don't have add this time, so let's remove that. So we only have one path, and that too with views index. And then we have to change the views as well. You can see this view is empty. So here, so in the Travelo views, okay, so earlier we were working with calc views and now it is changed. So in the calc views, we can simply copy it, right? So from the calc, so where's that? Yeah. So I want to copy this thing. Yes, you can type it, but I'm being lazy here. So let's go back to the views of Travelo and paste. Now here, I don't want it to be home. I want it to be index, and here it should be index.html. And we don't want to send any data as of now. Let's skip it. Let's just call that index.html. But will this work? Why to think? Let's go back to the browser and hit the home page. Okay, server is down, server is not running. So let's run the server as well. So we'll say run server. Okay, server is running. Let's go back here. Let's say refresh. And you can see we got a page, but that's a calc page, right? We wanted our own page there, the new page. If you go to urls.py, you can see we have, so when you say home page, you are calling calc.urls. We don't want to do that. We want to work with travelo.urls. That's when we have added it. So let's go back to the browser, say refresh. So now once I saved the project, you can see when I refresh, we got index.html of Travelo. But something went wrong. You can see we are able to get the page, but there's no image, there's no styling, and there's no JavaScript. In fact, if I right click here, and if I say inspect element console, you can see all these files are missing because we have only copied index.html, right? We have not copied the static files. So basically in this video, what we have done is we have created this new app named as Travelo, and we got this amazing UI from the website. You can simply type Travelo and colorlib. You can just go there. In fact, you can download any library you want, but just for this example, you can stick with me. Once you have done with this, you can try with your own templates. And then we have imported only one file. So make sure when you create new app, you have to do some changes. Now, okay, there might be one question. Why we are changing from calc to URLs? Why not create a new one, a new path? Yes, you can do that. The only thing is I wanted to have Travelo as my home page, right? That's why I'm changing it. But if you don't want to do that, you can simply say Travelo. So what will happen now is, if you want to get the Travelo homepage, you have to say the URL/Travelo, and that's where you will get it. In the last video, we tried to put the static files in our project. So it was a simple HTML file, plus we wanted some supporting file as well, like JavaScript, CSS, and images. And then we were trying to make it work. But unfortunately, things are not working here. So as you can see, we are getting the output where you got a page, but then it's not properly formatted, because to have a proper layout to it, we need CSS. And if I just go to inspect and if I search for console, you can see a lot of files are actually missing. But do we have this file in the project? Let's verify. So if you go back to the project, you can see we don't have a folder where it has all the JavaScript or images. So what we will do is let's create a simple folder. And that will be done in the Telusko. So let's do that in the project itself. So in the project Telusko, let's create a folder, and let me just name that folder as static. You can have any name, doesn't matter. You can call it as assets or static. And in this static folder, what I want to put all my files, all my static files. So let's go back to the place where you have our template. So this is our template where we have four folders. One is images, then we have JavaScript, plugins, and styles. Okay, so as you can see, we got two folders here. One is the template, which is Travelo here, where we have 4 folders, and then this one is our project folder, which we have created the project, which is Telusko, and then we have also created the folder, which is static. So let's go there. I want these 4 folders there, so we can simply copy these 4 folders and paste it here. The moment you do that, let me just close this. We don't need this anymore. Close this, and you can see here in the static we got all the files. Now it should work, right? Because we have added the files. Once it is copied, let's go back to the browser and let's say refresh, and you can see it's still not working because it's not that easy. See, trust me, when you work on a project, there are certain things you will be doing only once. Example, setting up your static files, you will be creating one particular folder, you will be putting all your files, but your Django should know where to look for those files, and that's why we have to specify the path, but not in a HTML format or the plain path. You have to mention that in a Django format. Okay, what I'm talking about. So first of all, you need to go to settings.py, and here you can see we have a static URL by saying static. But then to make it work, to use the static files, we have to work with two more settings here. So the first one is to specify where you will file all the static files. To do that, we have to say static. So we are informing Django now where you will find all the files. So we'll say static files underscore dirs, and here we have to specify the path. It can be multiple paths, so we'll be using a list. And here we have to say os.path.join. So basically you're joining the base path plus with the Telusko / static path. So to do that, we have to first say base path, and the base path is base dir, and here you have to specify the place. So it is Telusko / static. This is where you will find all static files. But then what Django will do is Django will make it simple. So Django will say, okay, you have a static file or static folder where you have all the files. So what I will do is I will pick up all the files in your static folder and I will put that in my particular folder, Django folder basically, just to improve the process. But what should be the name of that file? So you have to specify that. So we'll say static root equal to, so we can give any name. So we'll say os.path.join, and it should be in base directory. So we'll say base dir, and then we can put that in any folder. We can have it named static, that's your choice. Let's say assets. So we'll put all our folders. In fact, Django will do that. Django will put all our static files in this asset folder, and our job is done. But then the way you can refer them is with the help of static. So this is how you can refer to the static files. Okay, so this thing should work now, but let's go back, let's verify. Still not working. What went wrong? Okay, so what I will do here is let me just restart the server one. Not working. So what we are missing? First of all, we are saying Django will create a folder named as assets, but you can see we don't have any folder anywhere here. So we have to create that folder first. But I have mentioned that Django will do that. So yes, you have to inform Django, hey, you have to create a folder which is assets. And the way you can do that is by, okay, let me just pick up some other CMD, and here we'll do that. So we'll say CLS. Okay. So first of all, let me just work on test, cd Telusko. So we have to pass a command if you want to create a folder. And the command is, again, you have to say python manage.py. We know for anything we will use this file. So there's a specific command which is collect static. The moment you do that, it will collect all the files. Okay, so we got an error. Okay, so it says there is a problem with the path. Oh, okay, so I have created this static folder inside Telusko, which is the base directory. So maybe I have to remove this one. It is not inside Telusko, and say enter. Okay, now it is working. You can see it is working now, and you got a separate folder which is assets. Can you see that? And in this assets, you got all the files. This is what we wanted, right? Okay, now once we have done with that, let's go back to our browser and run. Oh, it's still not working. So we are going step by step, right? So first we have mentioned that, hey Django, you are responsible to handle all static files. But the moment you say Django will handle everything, we have to also edit a file here. Now which file? Now of course, when you say you are working with index.html, you can see this is where we are specifying all the paths. Example, if I go back here, so you can see here it says it's not able to find the CSS file. So it is on line number 9. So if you go to line number 9, you can see we are trying to use a CSS, but then it's not in a proper place. So how do you provide a link here? Now, whenever you work with static, so you have to change this URL. So you have to change this href to the Django understandable language. So just before every path, you have to do one change, which is you have to say curly brackets %static just before the path, and all these things will be coming from the static folder. So your path will be in a single quote of static attribute or static tab. So we are saying this, you will find this in a static folder right now. So this static we have configured just before, right? So I know it's a tedious task, but you have to do that everywhere. So wherever you have a path, you have to change this. So once I change this one, you can see there was an error on line number 9, but the moment I refresh it, But this time we got a different error. So it says invalid block tag on line number 10, which is static. So it is not able to understand static. So that's where we have to inform Django, hey, you have to load the static file first. So I have to say $load static. The thing is, when you as a programmer, you spend less time in coding and more time in debugging, right? I hope this will work now. Let's refresh, and okay, so this worked. You can see there's something changed in the layout. So that means it has find the first line. So on line number 9, the error gone. Now the next error is on line number 12. Same thing can be done on line number 12 as well, which is here. So this path need this thing. So we can simply copy this and paste it here, and we'll end this with percentage and curly brackets. Let's go back and say refresh. And you can see every time you do one correction, it will change something in the front end. And if I go back, you can see it is done with the line number 12, this is line number 13. Now the template which we are using has so many images, so many styling, so it will take some time. But when you are working on it, initially from start itself, you'll be doing all these changes, right? So what I will do now is I will complete the entire stuff. So wherever I have plugins, styles, and all these errors, I will put this thing just before that, and then we'll resume with the video. Okay, so I have done the changes everywhere. So wherever I found styles, plugins, JavaScript, everywhere I have done with this particular code. So now it's time to verify. Let's go back to the browser and say hit refresh, and done. Can you see that? Once you have changed everything, you got a page. Now this is a dynamic page, and we got a price list. Everything is working. You can see there is no error. But now you will say, hey, this is still static, right? What is dynamic here? Now, since we are sending all this data from Django, we can make it dynamic. So if I go back to my code, wherever you have a price, you can make it dynamic by sending the value from the views.py. But how to do that, that we'll see in the next video. So I hope you are enjoying. Yes, there are so many things running here. So just to go for a quick recap what we have done. So basically we are copying a template from the internet where we are saying, hey, I'll be using the same template, so it has some static files, but Django need to handle the static files. And to do that, we have to create a folder. We can name it anything you want, maybe static or something. And this is where you have to paste all the static files. And then in the settings.py, this is where to specify from where you will get all the static content, how do you refer it, and then in which folder you want to put it. So you can see we got that in assets folder. Here you have all the static files, and if you want to use them in your index.html or whichever page you are working with, so you have to prefix with this static tag, and then on top of it you just have to say load static. That's it. It will work in your project. Now in the last video we have worked with a design. Basically we were handling the static files, and then we were able to manage it, So if you want to see the output, this is what we have achieved, right? Again, this is not a design which we have created from scratch. We got this template, and then we are running this with the help of Django. Now all the data here which you can see is static, which means you have this data. In fact, when I say static data, I'm talking about the words here. You can see the images, the words, like we have Bali here, the price, everything is static. If you want to change something in future, you have to edit your HTML files. In fact, nowadays you want to change the data continuously. Maybe let's say this price here will be very dynamic. So every hour it is changing. So can we just change these images after every 1 hour without touching the HTML files? Maybe this data will be coming from database. So that means you want to make this data dynamic, and it should be coming from somewhere, not from the actual HTML page. Yes, the layout will be fixed, the colors, and then again you can change that. But I don't want to touch the layout, but at least the words and the images. So I want to pass this data from a Python code, because Python is a programming language, so you can do some processing there. And you can fetch this data from anywhere, as we have discussed before. You can fetch it from database, you can fetch this from the live stream, from anywhere you want. So once you have data in Python, you can simply pass it here in the HTML. Okay, but how? First of all, we need to generate data in this view, okay, in this views.py. So just to show you how we can do that, we can simply give a comma. So if you remember, whenever you call index.html, so basically the request goes to the server and says, hey, we want a home page. So this is the function which you will get execute, and this will render your page. Now when you say rendering, it will give you the page with the data which you want. So data I want to change the price there. So I will just give a dictionary here and I will say price. And in this price, I will mention the price as, let's say, $700. Okay, so in fact, we have done this before. So if you see, I want to change this barley price from 679 to 700. So in order to do that, we just have to go to index.html. So we are passing the data now from the views. So here we have to change it. Okay, so first of all, I have to check where I have mentioned that price. You can see the price is here. I hope this is for barley. Yes, it's for barley. And here I will mention the price as $700. The moment I change that, if I go back here, you can see, oh, we got an error. Okay, I can't say 700. I don't want to say 700. First of all, there is an error here. I should be giving a colon, but not the comma. Okay, so I want the price to be dynamic. So instead of saying 700, I would simply say, so we have used this before, right? This is the Jinja format. So here I will say price, right? It's that simple. You just go there, go back and say refresh. And you can see we got everything, we got a page, but this time the price is 700 and we are passing it from the actual Python code. But now I just don't want to pass the price. I also want to pass all the data, in fact, the images, the name from the Python code. Now think about this. If you want to pass all this information, so every destination, so you can see we have 6 destinations here, right? We have Bali, Indonesia, San Francisco, and list goes on. I want to pass every destination will have certain data. It has an image here. It will have a name, like we have Bali here, and then we have a description to it, and then we have a price. Okay, so we have 4 fields. We have images, name, description, and price. So we have to pass this 4 details for each destination. So in total, we have to pass 24 data, 24 fields. So we can say first destination image, first destination name, first destination description, and so on, second destination image. So we have to pass 24 values on a list. Now what makes sense is to create a class object. So basically whenever you have this combination of data, so instead of having 24 variables, we can have one object which will hold 4 data. So we can have 6 objects. So we have 6 destinations, so we can have 6 objects, and each object will have 4 values: the image, name, description, and price. Can we do that? And the answer is yes, and that's the beauty of object-oriented programming, right? We can create objects, but where you will do that? So basically, we will be using our very special class, a special file here, which is models.py. This is where you will create models. Again, the models which is available in Django is for a very specific purpose, to connect with database and stuff. So since we are not talking about database, let's stick to basic. So here I want to get a class, and then we will create object of that. So my class name would be destination. So again, we have talked about this everything in Python sessions. So we have talked about class and objects, and here we'll create a class now. So let's say class, and we'll name this class what? Destination. That should make sense. Okay, so we got class destination, and here we want to create some variables. How many variables? 4, right? But we'll also add one more, because in future we are going to connect this with database. So of course, in every database table we'll be having a primary key, so it makes sense to have an ID there. So let's also create a variable ID. We'll have a type as int. Let's have a name. This will be of type str. That's a destination name we have. We can also have image, because image is there. So image will be str. Then we also need description. So we'll say description is str. And then we need one more thing, which is price, right? So we'll say price is, let's stick to int. We can also have it float, but then if you look at the prices now, it's all int. So let's stick to int. So we got destination, we got 5 fields there. But how will you create the object? This is only a model. Okay, as of now, this is only a simple model. So it's a class which holds 5 variables. So if you want to instantiate them, if you want to get the object, you need to do that in views.py, because this is where you are calling this index.html. So let's create those objects here. So basically we are not passing 24 values or 24 variables, which I'm talking about. We are passing objects, right? So what I will do here is I will be creating an object for destination. So I will say destination 1. So initially let's do for 1, at least let's change that Bali part. So we'll say 1 of the first object, and this is object of destination. But as you can see, it is not able to find the destination. It says undefined variable. So basically we have to import it from models. So we'll say from .models import destination. So we are importing a destination here. Okay, this looks fun. We are not using this object, that's why we got a warning, but as of now, let's stick to it. Okay, so what I will do is I will be passing this destination here. So I don't want to pass a price, I want to pass a destination. So I will say single quote, I'm passing a destination. let's say dest1, and the value itself is dest1. That's it. So basically what we have is we got an object which have no values to it. Okay, so this object has multiple variables, but then none of them has a value. But it will be having some default values. We don't care. The name would be something, price will be something, but it's an object. So we are passing that object to the index.html. So in the index.html, how do you access it? So first of all, we have to reach where the Bali is. So you can see this is where the Bali is. Now if you are somewhere on top, I will try to share this file with you so that you can just copy it. So instead of having this Bali here, I want to have Mumbai, or maybe let's remove this Bali. I want the data to be dynamic. So what we can do is we have to use those curly brackets again because we are passing a variable, and we just have to say dest1 dot name, because the name now is not Bali, it's something which we pass. Let's verify if this is working. Let's go back to the page. Let's refresh. Oh, it worked. Can you see that? There's no Bali anymore. Okay, this is not what we wanted, right? Something went wrong. You know what went wrong? So basically we are not passing the value for the name. So how do we do that? It's very simple. You can simply say dest1 dot, this time we have to assign a name. So we'll say name is, so why to go for Bali? We can go for Mumbai. So let's stick to Mumbai. So we are changing it to Mumbai now. Let's go back and say refresh. It worked. Can you see that? We got Mumbai there. Okay, so that means we can change name. Can we change description? Yes, we can. Let's go back here and say dest1 dot description. So in the description we can have the city that never sleeps, right? Okay, so we have changed the description. Let's go back and refresh. Okay, something is not working, because we are changing it here but not in the index.html. Let's do that. So where is that? So where's the description? So this is where the description is. So in the curly brackets we can say dest1 dot description. Let's go back and say refresh, and you can see we got description as well. So we got Mumbai, we got the description. Now we want the price as well. So what I will do now is go back to the views. So let's set some more values. We can set the name down, price. Let's say price 700 here. Okay, just I'm going with random values here. Doesn't make sense. We don't want to change the stuff. So the values which I'm giving here is random. So let's go back to index.html, and here let's say price should be dest1 dot price. That's where the value is of price, and you can see we got 700. Okay, but I also want to change the image, right? We'll do that after some time. Okay, so let's stick to values first, and I'll do that for all different objects here. So image is not changing because we have not done that yet. But let's change the data for all different places here, and let's stick to 3 places. Okay, let's remove all the extra one. Let's stick to the first 3 destinations just to make it easy. So what I will do is I will go back to my destinations, and let's stick to 3, and let's remove the other part. So let's remove 4, 5, and 6. And that's done. So you can see we have removed those destinations. Let's verify once before going ahead. Let's refresh here, and you can see we got 3 destinations. That's great, it is working. So what we want is we want to make these 3 changes, right? So till this point we got Mumbai, but we have to also change destination for next 2. Plus we also want to make the images dynamic. But how will you do that? That we'll see in the next video. But before watching the next video, I want you to complete this. So what we can do is write the same code and then create 2 objects. So the way we have done here, you can see we got 1 object. You can create 2 more objects, one for the destination 2 and second for destination 3. Okay, change the value and then pass those objects from here, accept it in the index.html, and then try it out. And then we have done that in Python, right? How to work with list of objects. So make it work. Now in the previous video, we tried to make this data dynamic. So by passing the data from the Python file, we were accepting that data in the HTML. And in the HTML, we just have to use that ginger tag, right? And it works. But now I want to also make this the next 2 destination dynamic. And the way you can do that is by going to your editor, and here we need to create 2 more objects. So I can simply copy it. In fact, we also wanted images, right? So what I will do is before copying it, let me just also take the image before the price, of course. I will say dest1.image. And here the image would be, we have to specify the name of it. Okay, so but what is the name of the image? So if you go to your assets, here you can have images, and in the images, you can see the image name is destination 1, 2, 3, 4, and list goes on. So I'll be using these first 3 images, 1, 2, 3. So I will be saying the name of the image is destination_1.jpg. Now you might be thinking, do we have to write everything in the Python code? See, normally what happens is this data is actually coming from database. Maybe this data has been updated by the users or the agent. Simply as a developer, you will fetch this data from the database and display it on the page. So this manual work is not something you have to do it. But since we are learning now, we don't have a choice. Okay, so let's say destination underscore one.jpeg, and okay, let's copy this code, paste and paste. But this time, instead of having dest1, we'll say dest2. And here the data will change. So I will say for next will be Hyderabad, but what should be the tagline? In fact, I have read it somewhere. In Hyderabad, biryani comes first. So I will say first biryani and then next sherwani. Okay, and then destination image will change. Let's set the price as, let's say, 650. So if you want to enjoy the entire Hyderabad, this is the amount you have to pay. And let's say next is Bangalore. So we'll say this is this 3, 3, 3, 3, and here also it is 3. Okay, and then what should be the tagline of it? I don't know, maybe beautiful city. I have not read much about Bangalore, so let's say beautiful city. Also the tech park or IT park. But let's say this is destination 3. Okay, 3 and done. I don't know what type of images you will get, maybe the same images, but we are just trying to make it dynamic. So now instead of having 700, let's say 750, maybe it may take more money to enjoy that. Okay, so we got all this data and then we want to pass this data in the HTML. Okay, so we simply we don't want to pass two different objects. Let's pass it as one object. And the way you can do that is by creating the list of destination. We can say dests equal to, it will be the list of these destinations. I will say dest1, dest2 and dest3. Okay, so we got these 3 destinations and then we got in a list. Instead of passing all the destinations, in fact, one by one, we will pass everything in this one particular list. Done. We are passing 3 data now. You can pass thousands of data, your choice. Let's go back to index.html and here, let's make a change. But what? I don't know. Let's try. So here, we are passing 3 data, right? So what I have to do is, okay, so we can do it manually also. We can simply set the values, but don't you think you got this 3 data because you are displaying it? But what if the amount of destination you can see on this screen is depend upon the database? So what if you have 10 records there? You need to show 10 destinations. What if you want to show 20 destinations? So in that case, you can't simply make it static, right? Because even the number of destinations is not fixed. What if you can use a loop? Because in a loop, you don't have to worry about the number of destinations, right? Depend upon how much data you're passing from the database, you can show them. We are passing 3 data, so it should run for 3 times and it should show 3 data, right? But how can you use a loop here? We can use it, but we will be using loop on this particular one, so we will repeat the same stuff. So we don't need the next 2. So we don't need dest2 and 3 to come up. Let's move that. So we only have 1 now. Just to verify, let's refresh and you can see we only have 1 destination and even the data is not shown because we have done some changes. So I want to show 3. I mean, I'm not sure how much data you will be seeing here is because it is dependent upon the number of objects you pass. We know it now, but what if you don't know it? Let's go back. Okay, so here I want to run a loop. So how do you use a loop here? So we'll say percentage again the Django Jinja format. And here we have to use a loop format. So how do we use a loop? So we can simply say for a dest in destination. So if you remember the variable, this is what you're passing from the views, dests. Yes, you're passing it here. And we need to also end the for loop. So we'll say for loop ends here. And the way you can end a for loop is by using a keyword which is end for. Is it? Yes. Okay. Let's verify. Let's go back here and refresh. Okay, so that we got 3. We got 3 because of loop. So if you pass 4 objects in the views.py, you will see 4 destinations here. So now we are making it dynamic. Yay. Okay, but we want to change data, right? We want to change these names. I don't want to have this as Mumbai. So let's, whatever data is coming. So we'll say dest.name because the variable name now is dest, or the object name. So here as well, we'll say dest, and here as well, we have to say dest, save, go back. It worked. You can see we got Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore. Price is also different. You can see the first one is 700, next is 650, and next is 750. And look at the description. It's also changing. Yeah, there's one thing went wrong. You can see we got special offer everywhere. Again, we'll try to solve this later because only one location need to have special offer, or maybe 2. But we don't want to give offer on every destination. We will be in loss then, right? We'll do that later. We'll change it to, we'll make it one of them a special offer. Okay, but before that, I want to change the image as well. You can see we have still not done with the image. So let's make it work. Now if you go back to your views, you can see we are also passing image in a variable which is image, so, or img. So what you can do here is, this is what we want to make it dynamic, right? So how do we use it? Maybe you can use, I'm just trying out, let's see. I will say dest.img. Will that work? Let's verify. Go back here and say refresh. Oh, something went wrong. The image is not loading up. Let's verify in the inspect element. And if you go back to console, refresh again. Okay, it says image not found. So the image it is trying to find is dest.img itself. Can you see that in the error here? Okay, that means the data is not getting parsed properly. The problem is this thing, this logic here, this type of format works in the HTML. But if you see, this is itself is a Jinja format, so you can't simply use Jinja inside Jinja. that will make it weird, right? So how do you solve this? There are multiple ways of solving this. One way which I know, let's use that. So what you can do is, what if you can remove this part? Then the problem will be solved, right? But how? So what we can do is, we can simply go back up on top here after load static, and here you can say percentage, yeah. So we can say static path, which is images, because it's there in images, right? And I will say as base URL. Now what will happen is, whenever you want to use images, you can simply use base URL, and this base URL becomes a variable. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if you go down, okay, where is that? I don't know. Let's search for des.image. Okay, this is where we have done it, right? So here we don't want to write this static now. We can remove this part, and we don't even want to use Jinja format because that's what we are doing now. So what we can do is, in this double quotes, we can say variable, because base URL is a variable now. So I will say base URL. So you can see we are not writing the des.image inside the Jinja tag, it's outside now. So this is your Jinja variable, this is your Jinja variable, and on top of that, on top of your page, you are making static images as base URL. This works. There are multiple ways of doing it, whatever you feel better. Let's refresh. It worked. So that's how you can do this thing, right? It's awesome actually. It's not just Django. You can do this in different language available. We can do it in Java. We have different template engines there. So one of them is FreeMarker. You can also use Velocity. There are different things available there as well. In PHP, different frameworks are available. But this thing is awesome. The making page dynamic is something will make you a web developer. Okay, not just image, but in general content. Okay, anyway, so this is how you make the dynamic content. Do we have to change something here? Everything looks good. You can pass this data from database now. But how? We have not done anything with database at this point. So let's do that in the next video. But just to go for a quick recap, what we have done, we are trying to pass the data from the Python code. So you can see we are hard coding everything in the Python code, and we are passing it in the HTML to print it. Yes, we will make this thing coming from database, okay, but as of now, this is working. You can see we got all the data here. Yeah, okay. So we just have to use a for loop to run multiple div tags, and in every time it runs, it will have a dynamic content, right? So first time it will be for Mumbai data, and next it will be for Hyderabad, and then for Bangalore. Now till this point, we were able to get this list here from Mumbai, Hyderabad and Bangalore, and then we were making the price and the stuff on the description as dynamic. And then we were trying to solve the issue of images as well, which we'll be continuing with that. But there's one issue which we want to solve in this particular video. So before hitting database and fetching values from database, I want to talk about one important thing. You can see in the images, we got 3 listings, and then every listing has special offer. We don't want to do that. So out of all the listing we have, we don't want to provide special offer to every listing, right? Or to every place we have. So maybe I want to give special offer only to Hyderabad, because you can see the price is less. So maybe it's a special offer. How do we do that? How do we specify a particular special offer, particular element? Because if you see in the code, what we are doing is we have these 3 objects, and then we are simply adding them. And even in the index.html, what we have done, we are using a loop, right? So if you can see, we are simply using a loop here, and then it goes from the first destination to last destination, depending upon how much objects you are passing. So here we are passing 3, and then everywhere we are saying special offer. Because if you remove that, you will not get special offer anywhere. So if I remove this part, if I say save, let's go back to our display in the page, and refresh, you can see we are getting the same stuff but without special offer. So should we keep it or not? Because if you skip that line, it will give you special offer on every one. And that's where we have to specify the condition. In fact, even before specifying the condition, we need to do one more thing. So let's get back to our views.py and let's add one more field here. And we'll set that field, okay, not here. First of all, we have to change the models. So let's go to models.py, and this is where you will say offer. If you want to specify true and false, you can use a bool data type, which is for boolean. Now here you can have a true or a false. So let's say for a specific destination, if you're saying this is true, that means you have a special offer. That means if I go back to views.py, here for the first destination, if I say offer, we don't have offer there. So we can say false. For the second destination, we have, let's say des2.offer. Here we need to provide the offer, so we'll say true. We don't want it for des3, okay. Yeah, so we'll say des3.offer, and here I will say again false. So only for the second destination, which is Hyderabad, I want to specify that there's an offer. So if I go back to index.html, even if you do all the changes in your models.py, views.py, and if you still refresh, you can see we are getting offers everywhere. And that's where you have to specify the condition. But how? So when you say condition, one thing pops up, which is if else, and that's right, we will be using that. So how do we use if else here? It's quite simple. So just before the line, you can say, because you want to execute that only when it is true, right? But what is true? So we'll say if the destination.offer, if this is true, then only I want to print this. So when you have true and false, you don't even have to check with true, right? Because it will give you true, so it will execute that. In fact, if you really want to do that manually, so you can also say dest offer equal to true, then execute that part. But whenever you have this scenario, you don't have to mention that. Simply say offer. And then you have to also end this block. And we can do that with the help of a block, and we'll say end if. And your job is done. Let's go back. I hope this will work. Let's refresh. Okay, so can you see that we got special offer only on Hyderabad? So if I go back to my code, and if I, let's say in the views, I also want to give the special offer to Bangalore, I will say true for Bangalore as well. And let's refresh. And this is how you can make stuff dynamic. Now imagine this thing coming from database. So you don't even have to change anything in the code. Just go to database. There will be a field offer. So from true, just make it false with a SQL query, or maybe with the help of admin panel. And we will be doing those things in the further videos. We'll be working with database. So basic understanding is you can use if else in the views as well. Okay, not views.py, but index.html. And that's what makes Django so powerful. We have also used for loop, right? So yes, it is powerful. Now what next? Now what are things coming up? Now we have done all the things which we wanted to do. We wanted to have data dynamic. We wanted to have special offer only on the one particular place. But now I really want this data to be coming from database. So let's imagine we have a database, maybe Oracle or Postgres. In fact, we will be using Postgres here. So in the Postgres, I want to create a table. I want to create a database. What we want to do is we want to connect, or we want to migrate all this thing. So this migration is like creating tables in database with the help of your models. And that's where we have this amazing concept, which is ORM, Object Relational Mapper. So we want to map the objects and the tables. So tables, you can call them as relations. Now ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. Now if we talk about Django framework, we have ORM there as well, which is Object Relational Mapper. But the concept remains same. So what is ORM? Now think about this. When you talk about the virtual world, we have two different stuff here. One is data, because of course we want to work with data, information. And on the other hand, we have application. So what is dynamic and what as a user we use is application to access the data. Actually, we want to use the data, but we cannot do that directly, right? So even if you want to fetch some data from Facebook, you need to use the Facebook application. So let's imagine as a user, you want to interact with a database, and that database is sitting somewhere else. So if you want to interact, you need an application in between. So that means someone has to build that application. we will talk about that. But think about database now. So when you say database, if you expand it, I'm talking about the relational database here. So if you expand your database, database will be having some tables. So imagine if you talk about accounts, if you talk about products or shopping mall, so you will be having a product table, you will be having accounts table, and you will be having customer table. So when you talk about customer table, what it will have? Customer ID, customer name, customer address, maybe phone number. So if you talk about these 4 details, you will be having a table with these 4 columns. On the other hand, the moment you say application, if that application is built in any of the object-oriented programming, maybe C#, Java, Python, it will be having a class, right? That's how you create an object. So basically, to create the object, you need a class. Now, how will you define this class here? So of course, you will be having a customer class, and that customer class will have 4 fields: customer ID, customer name, customer address, and customer phone number. So in database, the customer table has 4 columns. The class here has 4 properties. Now, if we try to relate more, we can have multiple objects of this class, right? So customer can have, let's say, 5 objects or maybe 10 objects, your choice, depending upon how many customers visit in your shop. So let's say if you have 5 customers, every customer will have different name, different address, different phone number. So those things are stored in different objects. So every object will have its own data. Or maybe we can say every object has a different state. That's important, right? So state is basically the current values. So every object will have a different value. If you want to store this in database as well, you will be having a table. We have talked about that customer table. So in that customer table, one object represents one column, right? So the first row will be our first object data. The second row would be the second object data. The third row would be third object data. And how do we achieve that? How can you push this data from the application to the database? And that's where we have this amazing concept, SQL. So we have to use SQL query. Okay, when I say you have to use SQL queries, I'm talking about a programmer. So as a programmer, you write the code. Okay, so you write the SQL code. Now, if you don't want to do that, if you say, hey, I don't want to work on SQL, it's a good language, but maybe I want to focus more on my application, not on the SQL queries here. So you can simply say, I got a class here. I don't even want to create that table there. That table should be created automatically. Is it possible? And the answer is yes. So the framework which you are working with, maybe if you are working on Django, if you are working on maybe Hibernate in Java, it has a power to look at your classes and say, okay, this is a class, I want to create a table for it. So look at the class name. So class name, let's say, is customer. The table name will be customer. The class has 4 properties. Let me create 4 columns there. This class, so it depends upon how many objects you create. Maybe if you create 5 objects, I will have 5 rows there. The moment you create more objects and if you try to save them, it will create a new row in database automatically. And that's the power of ORM. Now, this concept is not specific to any language. You can use it with Python. We have Django there, Django ORM. You can use it with Java. We have Hibernate there. And maybe in some other language, we'll be having some more frameworks. So the important thing is ORM is an awesome concept where you can directly create your tables with the help of the classes which you create. And you can add the data with the help of the objects you create. So that's ORM in general. Now till this point, we have talked about how can you pass data to the view, but then from where you will get this data. And of course, that's where you want a database. So how will you create a database here? So first of all, if you want to say database, you need a database engine, right? Now there are different database engines available, or you can call them as DBMS, RDBMS to be specific. So we have Oracle, we have MySQL, we have Postgres, we have DB2. There are so many DBMS available, right? Which one to go for? Now, first of all, when you say Python, what makes more sense to work with Python is MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite because it gives you a better support to it. And for this series, we are going to use Postgres. So what we will do now is we'll install a software which is Postgres DBMS. So you can search for Postgres download, and this is the official website. You can simply click here. Now, based on your OS, if you're using Mac, Linux, or Windows, we have a different setup. So you can see we have an option here. Since we are working with Windows, we'll go for Windows here. And then you just have to click download the installer. The moment you click on this, it will download the installer for you, and you can simply follow the steps. So we will be using that. But then when you install Postgres, it will give you database for sure, but we also need a UI using which you can use it, right? And that's where we have to install one more software, which is PgAdmin. So it's a Postgres tool available, so you can simply click on download here. Just go to Google, search for PgAdmin and click on download. So the latest one is PgAdmin 4. So based on again your OS, you can select one. So we are using Windows, so let's click on Windows. And normally I don't go for latest version because it has some bugs. Let's go for one more, but for this video we can do it. So you can download 4.6. Let's see if that works. So I have Postgres downloaded. Let's install that first. So click on this setup. So we have to say yes, we don't have a choice. And let's see how things looks like. So it will open your Postgres, and it will, so steps are very simple actually with some configuration. So it will take some time for the progress bar to complete. Okay, so there was some additional dependency on the Microsoft library, so it was getting downloaded. And now when you click on next, it will ask you for the directory. So let's skip it default. Let's keep everything default and say next, next. Okay, so it will ask you for the password for the database. And you can see this is important here, super user. Remember your username, which is Postgres. And the password I will be keeping for this machine is 1234. Let's do that here as well. Click on next. And this is the port number you have to remember. For different services, we have different port numbers. And that too, for MySQL, we have different port number, which is 3306. For Postgres, we have 5432. Just remember this port number for our Postgres. Nothing specific here. Let's keep it default. Click on next, and I guess done. So now it will do the actual setup because initially it was just handling the prerequisites. So we are done with the setup here. You can see we got a finish time. It took a long time for this setup to run. I don't know why. Maybe on this machine something went wrong. So just uncheck that builder stack and click on finish, and your Postgres has been installed. Now if you want to access it, you need one more software, which is PgAdmin. So let's click on that. So let's do a setup completely so we can say next. We have to accept the agreement. We don't have a choice. We'll say next, nothing here. So let's have it PgAdmin, click on install. So it will also take some time to install. Let's wait. So that's done. The setup for PgAdmin also done. Let's click on finish. It will launch PgAdmin for you. So you can see you got a PgAdmin page on your browser. So that's how you can handle it. We don't have a good UI tool. Basically it opens in a browser. And now on the left hand side, you can see we have an option of servers. Now by default, you got a server here. It is asking you for the password. So the password we have to mention, which we have configured before, which is 1234 in this case. Click on, so I will simply say save password. Click on OK. And you can see it is starting your server. And you can see we have some databases available here. So you can see by default, it has only one database. We can use it or we can create our own database. Maybe we can do that later. And in this, you might be having some schemas by default. So if I say schema, basically tables, here you can see we have tables, and you can see we don't have any table as of now. So we want to create some tables so that you can store data in the database from the page which we are working with, or you might want to fetch data from here. In fact, you can also write your SQL query here. So you can just go back to SQL and you can create your own database here. You can create tables, but then we will not be doing that now. So we'll be doing that in the next video where we will be writing the code with Postgres and will connect with our application. And finally, we are reaching to that point where we are connecting our application with a database. So basically we want to fetch the data from database, so that's what we are doing now. In the last videos, we have talked about Postgres and ORM, and then we have done the setup with the Postgres as well. So if I try to open my PgAdmin, that's how you can access your Postgres using some IDE or some view. And you can see we have a server option here. So if I expand server, you can see we have database, and unfortunately or fortunately, we only have one database, which is Postgres. So let's create one more database here. And the way you can do that by right click on your screen, right click on your database and say create database. And let me just have the name of the database as Telusko. Postgres will be owner of this, and let's click on save. Nothing to specify much. So you can see we got a database which is Telusko, and in this, if I see the schemas, tables, there is no table here. So you can see we got database, but we don't have any table now. So let's create some, and that to those tables should be coming from the application. So we'll do that. So if you want to connect your application with this Postgres DBMS, you need to do some configuration. So let's head back to our Visual Studio, and here we need to do some settings. So let's go back to the Telusko project. This is where you have settings.py. And now let's do setting for database. So if you scroll down somewhere, you will find databases. right? And by default, it says it will get connected with SQLite 3. Hold on, we are using Postgres here. So we don't want to specify SQLite 3 here, right? So let's make the change. So here we'll say backends, it should be Postgres SQL. Database name is Telusko, so we don't need to specify all this stuff. We can simply say Telusko. That's my database name. Let me give a comma here. Now we have to specify something more because if you want to access your Postgres, we have to specify the credentials as well, the username and password. So let's do that. So in single quote, I will say who is the user. So if you remember, we have talked about user as well, and that is your Postgres. So this is what we have seen while installing Postgres. You have to also mention the password here. So we'll say password. In fact, we have specified the password, which is 1234. And then we have to also specify on which machine you have your database. It is possible that in your network, you have another machine in which you have your DBMS or Postgres installed. So you can specify the host. And this is where you can specify the address, the IP address of that machine. Time being, it's the same machine, so I will be using localhost. So that's the thing you have to specify here to connect with database. So this configuration done. Okay, but there's one problem. Postgres being a different software, Django being a different software, how they will connect? So basically we need a connector in between. And the connector name is, if I go to Google and if I search, so the connector we are going to use is SIPOC2. So if you see, it's basically a database adapter. So Postgres database adapter which connects with Python. So you can see it says it's a connector or the adapter between Postgres and Python. So this is what we wanted. So how do we install this? So we have a simple command which is pip install, and then you can specify the name. So let's head back to our prompt here and we'll say pip install the software name. So you have to say pip install name of the package and say enter. And this will get downloaded. It will take some time and it's done. It was quite fast. So you got the adapter as well. Now what is the next step? Now basically, if you remember, we have talked about ORM. So Django has this amazing feature of ORM. It will create a database tables for you. So example, for authentication, if you have your own models, it will create database there. So let's try to migrate. But before migration, we need one thing, right? We need a model. So the table which you want, which is destination, will be depend upon your model. And you will say, hey, we have a model file here, right? So if you see, we have a models.py. This is where you got your model. But no, actually, this destination is a simple class. You want to convert this into a model. This will not work. So how do we do that? So it's very simple actually. So if you want to convert a class as a model, if you want to give that more power, we have to specify models.model. So basically you are inheriting the feature of models there. Now will this work? No, still it will not work. Because see, when you say you are creating a table, so table will have a type of columns as well, right? So if you say the column name is name, the type would be varchar. That's what we do in SQL, right? Character string, or the character in bracket, you mention the size. So here you can't simply say str and int. It will not work in that way. And first of all, you don't even have to mention ID in your model, because in database it will automatically create a primary key for you, the ID column. So let's remove that. So I want to change this. Instead of having name, I want to specify the type of the column there. Now, how do we know that? So let's go to Google again and search for Django. So if you search for Django model fields, in their official documentation, they will help you with this. You can see on this side, so we can see we have field types. The field types is auto field, big auto field, and then binary field. We have character field, that's for string. We can also have email field. We can also have image if you want to upload an image. So you can see we have different type here. And how do we use each one? So if you just scroll down, they will also help you with the formats, or maybe yeah. So you can see we have auto field. This is how you should be using it. They also have the examples here. So if you want to use character field, you have to say character field, and you have to specify the attributes as well, the max length. Let's use that. So here the name would be characters. So we'll say models.char field. And in here, you have to specify the maximum length. So I will say max underscore length. And the length would be, let's say 200, or maybe 100 will do. Nobody has a big name more than 100, right? We'll do something for image later, but as of now, let's stick to description. And in description, you will say again models dot. Okay, but what should we be using for description? Description might be big. So we'll be using text field here. We don't have to specify the size. For price, it should be int. So I will say models dot integer. Do Do we have integer? Yeah, of course it should be. So integer field, and for boolean, you guessed it right, we should be having boolean field. Done, job is done, so simple, right? But then when you say boolean field, by default it should be something, right? By default, there should not be any offer on the places. So by default, the default value here is, let's say, false. Anything else here? Yeah, we have to specify for image as well, right? So we are missing for image now. So in the image, you have to upload the image, right? It will not be stored in database. So when you upload an image, it will be stored in a folder, and you have to specify the path here. That's where you have to specify the path, right? Path is important. So what I will do is I will say models dot, and you will say image field. So for the image, you have to use image field, and in here, you have to specify the location you want to upload to. So example, if I go back and if I say image field, so you can see in the image field, we have to pass upload to as the attribute. So where you will upload this. So I will say upload to, and let's say any name, I will say pics. There's a folder named as pics. I will upload everything there. So there's one particular problem which everyone does. In fact, I did that in my first project in Django. And the problem was, normally when you specify the field type, you give a colon and field type. But here, now since you are working with models, you have to give equal to, because you're assigning the values here. So this is important, because if you miss this, it will not create any column in your table if you don't specify equal to. So that's done. I think it should work now. But how do we verify this? Now, first of all, if you want to create a table, you have to migrate your models to the database. And for that, you have to pass a command. So what is that command? So let's go back here and say Python. Of course, you have to use manage.py. The command is, the first thing you have to do is you have to make a migration. Because if you see a folder here, in your Traveler, you have a folder which is migration, and it is empty. Yeah, we have one init.py, but we don't have the migration file. So let's create a migration file. So we'll say make migrations. This is the command you have to pass, say enter, and it will create a migration for you. And we got an error. Okay, so you can see there's an error, and it says the Traveler model destination is not available in the installed apps. So if you go back to settings.py, if you remember, we have talked about installed apps, or maybe not. So you have to mention your application name here, whatever you're working with. So let's do that quickly. So the app name is, so traveler.apps.travelerconfig. This is what you have to mention here. So your project should know what apps you're working with. So this is important. So if you don't do that, it will not do the migration. Let's do the migration again. I will say CLS. Let's do migration again, and we got an error again. We are missing a comma. Can you believe that? Let's go back. Okay, let's say CLS, and if I say migration, okay, there's another error now. Now this error makes sense. I was expecting this error. Now whenever you want to work with images in Django, and since you want to upload them, so there should be some library to handle that, and that library is below. So you have to install this as well. So let's do that quickly. So we'll say pip install. I know there are so many softwares you have to install, but everything will be done only once, right? So let's do that quickly. So it's installing Pillow now, and that should be done fast, right? Okay, finally we can make migration. I hope this time this will work. Let's say enter, and it worked. Can you see that we got a migration done? And in your migrations now, so if I expand this time, yeah, so you can see we got one more file which is 0001 underscore initials.py, and if you open that file, this is the migration you are doing. So basically you are doing a migration, which is create model, and these are the fields you have. And you can see ID. Even if you have removed ID, by default it will give you an ID, which is auto increment field, and you got name, image, description, and offer. This is what we wanted. So everything looks cool here till this point. But what do you think? Have we got a table there? Unfortunately, no. We have just created a migration file. We have not actually migrated something. So if you want to see what the SQL is, you can simply say Python manage.py SQL migrate, and to mention the package name, which is Traveler, and then you have to mention the migration file name, which is 001 in this case. So you have to say Python manage.py SQL migrate, the app name, and the version number, or the migration number. Enter. So this is the SQL query it is going to execute. Create table, Traveler destination, the primary key, and then the columns. You don't have to write a SQL query, right? Yay. Okay, now let's do the actual migration. So I will say Python manage.py and simply say migrate. Simple command, migrate. Say enter, and you can see done. No errors. That's something amazing. Let's go back to our browser. In fact, PgAdmin, I hope we will be getting tables now. Let's refresh, or maybe I will simply say right click here and say refresh expand this. Yes, we got tables. So all these tables has been given by Django. We don't even need them for as of now. We wanted this traveler destination and you got it. Okay, we got table. But if I want to show the data here, so if I say all rows, okay, this is empty because we have not entered data as of now, but can you see that we got a structure? Now you got a table from a class. That's the magic of ORM, right? So this makes sense. You got the setup and everything is working as of now. So we have done the migration, but what's more important is we want to add data, maybe with the help of some admin panel or maybe with the help of some page. In the last video, we were able to work with PgAdmin, so we got our database and tables as well. And those tables has been created with the help of Django, right? So we have not even written one line of SQL query to create tables. But then if you look at the tables, it's empty, right? So if I go back to my PgAdmin, if I look at the table, it's empty. Okay, but then we made one mistake in the last session. So I've made some changes and that's why you can see price here. But what we missed is in the model, we were working with integer field and we forgot to give a round bracket. If you have done that, that's great. So you don't have to worry about this error. But when I was checking my database, price was missing, and then I've done some changes to add it. But how will you get it? How will you add that price? So first of all, we have to make one change. We have to make it integer field. And then another way you can do that is go back to the SQL query and you can alter the table. So we have to write SQL query. You have to say alter table and the table name, and you have to add one more column, which is price in this case. That's one way. The another way you can do that is by doing the remigration. So again, you have to make the migration, again, you have to shift. So let's try that. So we will say Python manage.py, and here we'll say make migrations. And if I say enter, you can see it will do the migration for you. So it says you are trying to add a non-nullable field price to the destination without a default value. So one way you can set a default value here, right? That's one way. Otherwise, you can pass the default value while you are creating one. So instead of changing the model, you can pass it here. So let's say I want to add default values. We know we don't have any rows in the database, but still, let's say I want to add the default value as 0. Done, right? We don't have any rows, so it will not affect much. By doing this, if you go back to your PgAdmin to refresh your table, oh sorry, we have still not migrated, right? Let's do that. So I will say Python manage.py migrate, enter. Migration done, there's no issue. And if I refresh, so you can see we got price. Yeah, but in my case, you can see it says no migration to apply. But in your case, there will be a migration, so do check that. So that's how we do remigration, or what would you say, making migration again. And you can see we got two files now. One is initial migration and second one is destination-price. So that's one more migration we got. So that's how you can do multiple migrations if you want to. So let's say if you make some more changes to the project and if you add more files, then you might need to add more migrations. Now till this point, we were able to work with database. Okay, so when I say database, we only got a database and a table, no data. So of course, I want to push some data in the database. Now basically, we can do that by two ways. One, by creating a page where a user can push data, or we can have an admin page. So normally admin page is normally accessed by admins or the super users. And then when you say users, let's say when you talk about Facebook, you can push data. So you are a normal user and you are able to push data. But here we are working with destination page, right? So this will be pushed by the agents or the admins. So let's do that. So let's create an admin page. Okay, the moment you say we need to create an admin page, it will be a complex task, right? We have to design a page and then we have to do some authentication stuff as well. Since we are working with super users, it will be critical, right? Let's see how that works. So let's get back to our page. And here, so if you want to access the website, this is how you're doing it, right? And if you want to access the admin page, you simply have to say localhost:8080/admin. And the moment you say enter, maybe it will not work. So because the server is not running, let's get back here and let's run our server first. So you can see we got a page where it is asking for the login. Now we have not designed this page. Now this is given by Django, so that's great. So maybe Django only gives you the design, not the actual working. Let's try. First of all, it's asking you for the username and password. Now we don't have a username and password with us. Now, since I'm working on this laptop with the same Django framework, with the same browser, that's why it is able to pick the name. But for you, it will not pick that, so it will be blank for you. So we need to create a super user. How do we do that? So for that, we need to go back to your Visual Studio Code or VS Code, and here, let's create a super user. But how? So to create a super user, we can simply say Python manage.py, and this is where you have to pass a command. Now, I don't know the command, so I will simply say help. The moment you say help, it will give you a lot of options. You can see we have used run server, we have used collect static, and then migration, migrate. Here we need to use create super user. So we'll say Python manage.py, and here we'll say create super user. The moment you say enter, it will ask you for the name of the super user. Now, since I'm not doing this for the first time, and that's why I'm getting this username option, but if you're doing this for the first time, it will give you username option, and it will say, do you want to go for default name, whatever default name you select. So I will go for Naveen, or maybe this time I should go for something else. I will say Kiran, and the email address I will be using is connect@telusko.com. I will say enter. It will ask you for the password. I will say 1234, enter. Now, this is not a password anyone should keep as a super user, but since we are just trying out, let's try. Now, it says the password which you are using is not good. It's not strong, it's too short, it's too common, it's entirely numeric. We don't care. I will say Y and done. You got your super user. Okay, but what's the username? It's Kiran, and the password is 1234. Let's go back. Here I will say Kiran and 1234. Click and log in. Done. You can see that we got a admin user here, and we'll say, okay, save. When I click on users, now since, as I mentioned, I'm using this for the second time, so we already have a user Naveen here. So you will get only one user if you're doing it only once. Since I've done this for the second time, so we got Kiran as well. And you can click on Kiran, and you can simply specify the values here, the first name, last name, and then you can specify if the user is active. You can set the permissions here. You can see we have a lot of options available, and that's done. Let's go back to home. So we got users, we can add more users, we can change the permissions, all this stuff we have options here. In fact, you can also create groups, but we don't want to add users, we don't want to add group as of this at this point. We want to add more destinations, right? We want to work with database destination part. How will I do that? So I want to create a way to add destinations in the database. So that means we have to get a page, but do we have to? So if you go back to your Visual Studio, you can see apart from all these files in your app, we have one more file which is admin.py. Here, we just need to register the model, and automatically it will give you the page. You don't trust me, right? Let's see. So first of all, we need to get the model here. So we'll say from .models, and we have to import destination. And then once you got the import, you just have to register it. To register, we have to say admin. In fact, the function name is register itself, but it belongs to admin.site.register. And in bracket, in that function bracket, you have to pass the model name, which is destination in this case. And I guess job is done. So just by doing that, if I go back to my browser and if I say refresh, you can see that we got a destinations as the tab here. If I click on destinations, you can see we don't have any destination now. Let's add. But before adding, because see, when you click on add, it will ask you for name, the images folder, description, and price. We can do that, and you can also specify is it to offer or no. We can do that. So when you say images, now these images are coming from the users. It doesn't matter is it admin or normal users. We have users who are passing the images. And the earlier case, we have worked with the static resources. And for that, we were having a different folder as assets. But this time we have to go for a different folder because this will be users data. How will you do that? So we'll see that in the next video, how to work with media and how to push the media content from here in the media folder and how to access that. Now in the last video, we have talked about admin panel and how can you access that in Django. So we need to create a super user, and it was quite easy to work with, right? In fact, we also got a page where you can add the destinations. But then the problem was with the images, right? So when you upload an image, it should go in a particular folder, not in the static content. So how do we do that? Now there is one change. If you're following this place from start, the VS Code which we were using was in dark theme, and now it's in white theme or light theme. But why? Okay, so because we are switching between the VS Code and the browser, and then I realized when you say browser, we have a white background and here we have a dark background. So it might affect the video quality plus the way you watch it, because if you're decreasing the brightness for the browser, you have to increase it for the dark theme. So let's stick to white theme at least for next few videos. Okay, so what we have done is we have added the destination and it is working, right? We need to work with that media file or the media files or the images or videos, whatever you add. So how do we achieve that? So for that, we have to move to settings.py, and here we have to add the path for the media. So what path? So we have to use media underscore root. So this is where you have to specify the location of the media files, and we'll use a base path for that also. So we'll say os.path.join. So whatever the base path is, first of all, let's pick that. So we'll say base underscore directory, comma, and now we have to specify the path or the name of the folder. You can have any name, doesn't matter, but Django naming convention says, let's stick to media file itself. So let's stick to media folder. We have to also specify the URL which you are going to use in your views or the templates. So for that, I will say media underscore URL equal to, so we have to specify the path, which is media in this case, and done. And that's you have to mention here. We need to also change the URL of the folder. So we have to go to urls.py, and you can see we have a particular URL pattern here. So basically you need to add URLs. There are two ways of doing it. One, you can actually take this URL and you can embed it. So let's do that. So we can say pattern equal to URL pattern plus, and you can specify the path. So basically you have to also specify the media URL here. Okay, so we can say URL patterns plus, and you can add the path. Otherwise you can simply say plus here and you can add the path. You have two choices. Let's go with the old way. So let's add the path. So the path we want to add is static file. So we'll say static. So you have to pass two parameters, one for the URL and one for the root. So we'll say both are coming from settings. So we'll say settings dot media underscore URL, comma, and then you have to specify the documents root. So we'll say document underscore root. And here you have to specify settings dot media underscore root. That's it. There's two things you have to mention. But you can see we are getting errors. So errors is for static and settings. It is not able to find static and settings. So we have to import it. So how do we do that? Let's go back here and say from django.conf import. So from comp, you will get settings. Okay, done. And where you will get static. So for that, you have to say from django.conf.urls. Now, if you're thinking you have to by heart this, not actually, you can just simply Google it. Since I was working on this, I remember from static, you have to import static. And that's it. So you have to import these two things, settings and static. Your job is done. I hope this will work. Now, once you have added your media file, let's verify if this works. I don't know. Let's try. Let's go back to our page. And here we'll add our destinations now. So we'll click on destinations and let's create some new destination. Okay, but for that we need some images, right? Because I'll be adding 4 cities here, and for that you need 4 images. So let me just quickly go to Google and download 4 images for 4 cities. Okay, so you can see I have downloaded some images from the Google randomly and we got 4 cities. In fact, I've searched for the city name and we got it now. So let's add this images and name as well. So let's go back to name. So the first city I will add is Mumbai. So let's choose a image for Mumbai. So let's select that. And let's add descriptions. I will say the city that never sleeps. And then the price. So let's go for random. Let's go for 700. I guess that's what we have used before. Now click on save. It will add the city for you. Let's add some more. Click here. I will say this time this will be, let's say, Hyderabad. Choose Hyderabad, and let's say this is Biryani city. And the price would be, let's say, 650. And let's keep Hyderabad in offer because we want to provide the offer to it. So let's click on save. Let's add some more. So this time let's go for Pune, and we'll say the Queen of Deccan. This time for Pune we'll say again 600, but then in Pune will also be in offer. Save. And one more, last one, which is Bangalore. Choose a file, and the description would be the Garden City. Okay, and then price, let's say 750, and it's not in offer. Let's click on save. So basically we got 4 destinations and our job is done. So we were able to create multiple destinations, and you can actually see them when you click on each and every one, and you can see them. But one more way you can verify all this data, just go to PgAdmin, and now if you refresh, if you say I want to fetch all the data, look at the database. So you got the IDs, you got the names of 4 cities, you got the location where you have all these images, and then you got description as well. I hope, yes, and you got the offer. So we have offer on Hyderabad and Pune, and we got the price as well. Everything looks good. But I want to show them on the screen now, because if you see the page, we are getting only static content. So whatever we are passing initially from the page, we don't have Pune, and then things has been changed in database. It's not reflected here. You know why? It's because we have not done any changes in the code to fetch from database. Now to achieve that, we have to go to views.py, and you can see we are sending static content. Now first of all, we don't need all this content. Delete. Okay, so basically you are passing dest, but we don't have dest here. Let's create. What do you think? Will it be difficult? Let's try. So I will say dest equal to, so we want to basically access destination here. So destination dot, the way you can fetch the data is by saying objects dot all, and that's it. So this command will go to database, it will fetch the data for you, and it will store it in dest. Okay, we are getting error here. Is it because of the spelling mistake? Oh, it says class destinations has no objects member. Okay, this is not the problem with the Python. This is maybe Visual Studio is not able to fetch that. Let's see if that works. So let's go back to our page, refresh the page. Can you see that? We got the data. We got Mumbai with the tagline. We got Hyderabad with the taglines, behind city and then Queen of Deccan. And the data as well. The price has changed and we got 4 cities. We got special offer on Hyderabad and Pune. What is missing is image. Oh, something is going wrong with image, but we have uploaded the image as well. How do we verify that? If you go to Visual Studio, you can see we'll be getting one more folder here, which is media. And if you expand that in pics, we have all these images. So images are there. So what is going wrong? One way to verify that is by going to inspect element, inspect and go to console. You can see it is not able to find the image. Okay, let's see what is going wrong. And to see that, we have to go to index.html, and here if you can see, we are fetching the image from the base URL. It's not there now. So how do you fetch? So you have to say dest.image.url, because we have to go for the global URL there. I hope this time this will work. Okay, you can see there is no error, and you can see we got images as well. It's that simple, right? And it's so dynamic now. If you add more images, in fact, let me just do that quickly. Let me also take Surat. So I've downloaded one more image from the internet, and let's use that to add one more data, and let's see if that reflects on this page. So we got our admin page here. Let's add one more destination, and this time it will be Surat, file, Surat, and the tagline would be something, I don't know, need to search that. And this, let's say the price is again 650. It's not in this offer. Let's click on save. And the moment you do that, we have not changed anything in the code. But if you refresh your page, you got one more city, which is Surat, and you can see that. It's that simple. This is how you work with, you fetch from data from database, and that's the part of Django. Now till this point, we were able to fetch data from database, and then we were able to display those destinations on the page. But then we are missing one big thing, and that is the login and registration. Of course, right, when you build an application, that application will be having a lot of users. Now some of the users will be admin, and then we have worked with the admin user details as well, right? So we have created the admin. Now admin can add data to the website from the backend, of course. But what if you want to work with normal users? Yes, you can create accounts for them as well, right? So let's say for your application, you have 10 users. So what you will do, you will manually create accounts for them. Now that is possible. And then you can give a login form to them. They can simply log in through your application. Okay, now that is one way. The another way is you can have a registration form for users so that they can register themselves. Now that makes much more sense, right? To have a login and registration form for your application. But if you know that you will be having limited predefined users, admin will add all the users. But here, let's create 2 forms, one for login, one for registration. But initially, we'll start with registration. There are certain things we have to change. Now, first of all, since we have restarted the machine, so I have to make sure that we are working in the environment. So if you go back here, first of all, I have to say work on test. And then we need to run the server, because if you go back to the browser and if I say enter, you can see server is not running. So I have to run the server first. I will say Python. So we have to say python manage.py run server, and then this will run this server. Okay, so you can see we are running this server now. Let's go back here and we got our page. Okay, this is what we wanted, right? So what we need here is we want to say login and registration. Now for that, where you will put it? So of course, right, in your form, there should be a way where you can keep your login and registration button. So now instead of changing the existing design, since we don't have a predefined form for registration, so we'll change here itself. So let's have home about us. We don't want services and news. We'll remove that and we'll change that with login and registration. In fact, we can also remove contact there. But then if you want to have those features, of course, you will be having two forms as well. Now, as we have discussed in the previous sessions, that whenever you want to create something different, example, we have worked with a calculator, then now we are working with a traveler application. Now, if you want to have the user registrations, login, logout, registration, you can create a separate module for it. You have a choice. You can still continue with the same app. That makes much more sense while you're learning. But what also makes sense is to learn something new, right? Why do we create modules? Now you can have two different modules here, right? We have registration module, we can have a traveler module, so that we can reuse the module. So let's say if you want to use this module for some other application, we should be able to do that, right? So let's create a separate module here. And that will be, so let me just click here. And let's create a module for accounts. So how do we do it? It's very easy. We have done that before. So we can simply say python manage.py, and then we have to say start app, and then we have to mention the name, which is in this case, I will say accounts. You can go for any name, doesn't matter actually. So we go for account and we got an error. Oh, okay. So we have to make sure that we are working in the environment. So I missed that. Let me just do that quickly. Now, since we have using a new command prompt, so we have to say work on test. And now let's again hit that same thing. And now you can see we got the app named as account. So if you go back here, there should be account. So you can see that we have accounts here. We don't want to work with media anymore. Let's use Telusko. Templates is required. Okay, so you can see we got accounts here. And if I expand accounts, it's a new app now. And that's why you can see we don't have urls.py. So we also need that. So first of all, let's create it. So I will go back to the accounts and we need a urls.py because we will be working with at least 3 links: login, registration, and logout. So let's do that here. Now I don't want to type it from scratch. We will be copying it from Traveler. So let's go back to Traveler's URL. Let's copy this and go back to our URL and paste. This is the new urls.py we are creating. So what will change? The first thing is we have to say pattern, yes, path. Let me just get that on new line. Anyway, the moment I say save, it will go back to its previous position. But let's change it till now. So the URL which we need here should not be blank because that's for the main application, which is for Traveler. So what will be the URL here? Now, first one, we need 3, right? So let's start with registration and then we can add login and logout later. So we'll say register. And in the index, we have to say register. Of course, you can go with any name, but let's go for registration and register. So you can see we got a URL mapping for register. So if someone is calling register, we will be calling this. But you can see we got an error. Now it's obvious, right? We are working from a long time. Now we know what will be going wrong here. In views.py, now the views.py of the new app which we have done. So if you go back to views.py, you can see we don't have anything here. So basically we have to get a function which will be having a name as register. Okay, so we will be doing that. But do you think it will work even if I do that? Actually not. The moment you create a new app, if you remember, every time you get a new app and if you have your own urls.py, you have to map it with the original urls.py, and we have not done that. So let's do that quickly. Let's go back to the URL of Telusko. This is the main URL mapping we have. And we have to add one more here. So we'll give a comma, that's already there. So we'll say path, and this time we have admin. Now it's time for accounts. Now here we have to include the URLs of accounts, right? So we have to say include, and in bracket we have to say accounts.urls. The same thing we have done for Traveler, remember? But Traveler is the main module which is working with the slash or the home URL. But if you want to access accounts, we'll be using account/. Okay, so whatever URL like login, logout will be accounts/login, accounts/logout. Okay, so that makes sense. We have done with this part as well, just to finish things quickly. Okay, but now it's important to work with this views.py. But now what? So basically what we have done is we have created this new app which is accounts, and then we have mapped the URL. So whenever URL comes, it will come to the views.py. So we can say dev.register, and we have to accept a request. Okay, and then we can't keep a function blank, so we'll simply say pass. Basically, we have created the function, but it's not doing anything now. But then if you want to make it work, of course, you need to call a URL, right? And that will be coming from the index.html. This is where I want that button of registration. So basically, we need 3 buttons: login, logout, and registration. As of now, let's only talk about registration because that's what's important. So I will go back here and let me remove all this about and services and news.py. So let's have index.html and context there. And in between, I want to have registration, or maybe you can do it afterwards. And we'll say copy this and we'll paste. Now this is where instead of having context.html, we will be saying register. But if you remember, register belongs to accounts now. So we can't simply say register here. So we have to say accounts/register. So let's change this contact to register. And our job is done. Let's verify if it is working. So let's go back to the home page and say refresh. And you can see we got home, contact, and register. The moment you click on this, it will call the function which is register, which is doing nothing. Can you see that? We got an error. It says what? It says view accounts.register didn't return a HTTP response. That's important, right? We can't simply say pass. That will not work. So we have to do some programming there. So let's do it. So basically you have to go to views.py, and here you have to call the page which is registration. So we'll say, how do we call that? So we'll say return, and we have to render a page by passing the request object first, and the page name is register. So we'll say register.html. But now you will say we don't have this page, and you're right, we don't have this page. So we need to create a register.html. So we'll do that in template here, and let's create click. I will say register.html. Now we can have a very simple page here, nothing complex. Maybe in our template, actually, we don't have a registration.html so that we can get a good view. Let's create a simple registration form. Again, you can make it, you can have an amazing UI after that. That's your choice, but let me make it simple. So I will say, I want a basic HTML sample first of all. And in the body, I want to create a form. So first of all, let me set the title as registration. In the body, we have to get a form and form action. Now what it will call? I would say it will call register. And since we are submitting data now, we have to say method equal to post. So we got a form, and then we have to find some fields. Now, first of all, we don't know how many fields we require here. Maybe we need 2 fields, 3 fields, 5 fields. Now, first of all, when you say you want to register the data, now this registration will go to the server, right? And on the server side, we have database. Oh, first of all, we don't have a database here. So we need to create a database first so that this data will go there. Now, what if I say you don't have to create a database? If you remember, when we said migration, remember when we talked about migration, it has created a lot of tables in your database. One of the table is for users, right? It's so simple. Let's see if that works. Let's go to PgAdmin just to verify if we have the database available or table available. So when I open my PgAdmin, if I go back to the database, where is that? Is it Postgres 11? Yes, in that we have the Telusko database. And you can see we have a table here which is auth user, right? And if I say view all data, in fact, we have used it when we were working with super user, and you can see we already have 2 users here. We got Kiran and Naveen, but both these users are actually super user. You can see we are saying true and true. So basically they can log in through the admin panel as well. But now we want to create a normal user, not super users. So we have this table already, and then in this table, you can see if I show you columns, we have ID. We don't have to worry about ID, that is auto-generated. We have to worry about password. Last login also something which it will take care of. So we need password, we need username, right? We also need first name, last name. In fact, those are optional, but let's use that. We have email, we'll ask that from the user. Date join, it will pick up the system date. So the fields are password, username, first name, last name, and email. So basically we need 5 fields. Let's do that. Let's go back to our form and let me quickly use it. But since we are getting a form, we have to remember one more thing. We have to use CRF token, right? We have talked about it before. So let's take, so once we got CSRF token, now we have to create those fields. Let's do that quickly. So we got input type text, and then we want to have a name for it. Let's start with the first name. I will say first underscore name. That's what the name in the database is. So yeah, so first underscore name, and then we'll have a placeholder, and the placeholder will be first name. This is something which will be shown in the text field. Of course, you can also have a label here, but just to keep it simple, I'm going for first name there. And job is done. Let's have a BR tag. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Copy. Now, how many fields we need here? So basically we need 5, right? So let's do that. We got 5. In fact, we need one more. When you say password, if you remember, whenever you go to any website for registration, we have 2 password fields. One is password and second is confirm password. We'll do that here as well. So we'll say 6 fields. So the second one is the last name. Here as well as the last. The next field will have username, and here we'll have username, and the next field is email ID. In fact, what we'll do for email, let's skip email, right? So type will be of type email. For next one, we'll say password. Or maybe I will say password 1 because we have 2 passwords here, right? So this will be again password, password 2, and this is confirm password. Okay, and then the type would be password. Done. We got our form here, right? But how will you verify this? Let's try. So we'll save this code. In fact, we have done all the coding required to get this form at least. Let's go back to our browser and say refresh, and you can see we got our form, and we also got placeholder. We got first name, last name, username, email, password, and we got confirm password. The button is missing. Okay, can you believe that? Okay, so we need to also get a button there. We'll say input type is equal to submit. We got a submit button as well. Let's go back here, refresh, and we got button as well. Now, let's check if this is working from the home page. From there, we want to call this page. I will say enter. And you can see we got register, click on register, we got the form. But then this code will not work. Even if you submit the details here, it will not save the data in database because we have not done the actual coding as of now. So in this particular video, we have created a special app which is for account, in which we will be doing login, registration, and logout. And time being, we have created the page for registration so that a user can register itself. But this code will not work because the coding is still remaining. In the last video, we have started working with the registration form, and then the moment you click on submit, the request will go somewhere. Oh, where? But so if you go back to relational.html, we are saying when you click on submit, request goes to register. But what is register here? So if you go to URLs, you can see whenever someone calls for register, it will call the method or the function which is register itself from the views. But we are using the same function for both the requests, for fetching the page which is relational.html and for sending data as well. And now that's where the get and post makes sense. So basically, when you are calling this register.html, you are sending a get request. When you are submitting data, you are sending a post request. So even if your URL is same, what is changing is the type of request. So here, based on what type of request you send, you will call that particular page, right? Or the feature. Now in this case, we want to work with, so this should be executed when you send a get request. What if it is a post request? In that case, you will say if. So how will you check if the request is get or post? So you can say if request.method, if that is equal to post. Now how will you check that? So we'll say if that is equal to post, then you will do something. Otherwise you will say else. You will execute this part, right? It's that simple. We are missing a colon there. So if it is post, then what you will do? So if it is post, it's very simple. You can simply fetch all the values which is coming from the user. Okay, but how will you fetch all those data? So it's very simple. You will create some variables. So you will say first named as the first variable, and you will say request dot. Now there are multiple ways of fetching data. One is if it is get, you will say request dot get. If it is post, it is request dot post. In fact, we have seen this when we were adding 2 numbers, and that's why that example was important. So you will say request dot post, and in this you will specify from where you're getting data. So you're getting the data from first name, and this first name is same as the name of a field in the HTML file, right? So we also need last name, so we can simply copy this. Again, we need 6, I guess, or here 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and here we'll say last name. This has to be username, and this will be password, but password 1 because we need 2 passwords, password 1 and password 2. So we'll say password 2, and this will be email. Okay, we have to change some stuff here as well. So this is last, this is user, this is password1, password2, email. So that's it. We got the data from the user. But how will you save this in database? Now, if you say you got the value, now you want to hit this data to the database, we need to write SQL query, right? That's what we do in normal projects. We have to use SQL to interact with database. But that's not the case because we are using ORM. Once you got your data, you can simply push that data in database, provided you have a model with you. So if you remember, if you have a model object, you can set this data there and you can save this data in database directly. But do we have a model object for the user? So you don't have to worry about the user model object. It is there in the Django framework. We just have to use it. And the way you can use that, so first of all, you have to import it. So you will say from django.contrib.auth.models. And you have to import two things. The first one you will import is user, and then we'll also be using for login, which is auth. So auth will be used for the login part. So let's take it as at this point itself. Once we got all the data, let's save this data. Now, first of all, we need to create a user object. So you will say user is equal to. Now, since we already imported user, so we can say user.objects. That's how you handle the database. So you will say user.objects. Now we have to create a new user. So we'll say create underscore user, and in bracket you have to pass all the parameters. The first one you will say username, you have to pass username, password. Okay, now we have to pass only one password, not two. So let's pass password1, and we have to pass the email ID, and we'll set the email ID as email. So all this data, all these fields are available in the model object of Django for the user. So we'll say first name, and we'll say first name. So this user is of the model, and then this username is what you are passing. Same goes for all the fields here, and last name would be last name. And our job is done. Once you got the object, okay, we have not saved it yet. We have got the object with all the data. Now once you got the object, it's very simple. You just have to save the data. And the way you can do that is by saying user.save. Now I know you don't trust me, okay, but let's see if this works. In fact, I want to do one more thing. Once it is saved, I just want to print something on the console so that we'll know something has happened. I will say print user created. That's what I want to say. And then we also want to call a page. Maybe I want to call the home page again. Once the registration is done, I want to call the home page. So I will say return. So we have to redirect to the home page. We'll say redirect /. That's how you go back to the home page. Okay, but as you can see, redirect is not available. Let's go back to render, the first line, and we also import redirect. And our job is done. So we are redirecting to home page. I'm not sure will this work. Let's verify. Let's go back to our home page, and we'll say register. I want to register the user. And this time, I want to register Manoj Tiwari. The username is Manoj. Email ID is man@gmail.com. And the password is, let's say, 1234. Let's set the password as 1234. Click on submit. We got the home page. Yeah, so you can see if I go back to my console, it says user created, but the actual verification will be done in the database. So let's go back to our PgAdmin, and we'll say right click, view all data. Can you see that? We got a new user, and this user is not a super user, and that's why it says false. We got username, first name, last name, and then email ID. What else we have? Is it a staff? No. Is active? Yes. And last login is not done. That's fine because we have not done the login yet. Date joined, the current time. Everything is set, and your password is stored in the secure format. Done, right? We are able to register the user, but we are still missing some things here. So what exactly we are missing? We are missing three things. The first thing is we have not verified if the password1 is matching with password2. That's the first verification we have missed. The second verification is what if the current username is already used? Example, when you create an account on Gmail or anywhere where the username should be unique, we are not checking that. Third, we are not even checking if the email is already exist or not in database, because if it exists, you can't use the same email ID. So that's what we want to verify before. In fact, this is not a good practice. We should verify first. But since we were excited, we have done the code, it's working, but we have to first check that. So how will you check? So even before doing this, we have to apply if condition. So you have to say, if the password1 is equal to password2, then only you should proceed. Even all these things should be done only when it is true. Else what you will do is you will print user not, or maybe password not matching. Okay. this is what we need. So if you go back to the registration form, let's say register again, and this time let me enter any random data here, any random username, random email ID. Oh, it should be verified. And then the password is 1234 for the first, password is 1234, the password is 12. Click on submit, and you can see we got the home page again. But let's go back to the console, and the console says password not matching. And this time we have not got the new user. So it says, you can see nowhere it says user created, so we have not created the new user. So that was the first checking. The second checking we have to do is if the user is already exist in the database, even if it is same, password is same, we have to first check for the user. So let's do that here. So if user.objects, how will you check? So I will say user.objects.filter. In this filter, so we'll say username.username.exist. Now, if this will give you true, it simply means the username is already taken, so you can't use that. So we'll simply print here username taken, right? And this part, the actual thing should be done only in the else part. So now again we have to use tab. Okay, so basically we are checking two things, right? Username taken. In fact, we need to do one more checking here, which is for we'll say elif, and this checking is for the email ID. So we'll say so we'll check for email, the same thing we have done for the user. If this exists, we'll print email taken, and then the entire stuff will be available in the else part. Simple, right? Nothing complex. And now let's try this once again. Let's go back to my browser, and if I say register, okay, let's go for a random value again. So we'll say Manoj, random value, and then I will be using a username which is Naveen, which is already taken, and password will be anything, email ID should be anything, not password. Let's click on submit, and it should, okay, so we got registration again, but let's verify in the console. You can see it says username taken. You can also try it for the password, so make sure that you have a password and read that again, it will print invalid password. Okay, so that's how you handle the validations here. We have checked for username, we have checked for the email, and if everything is matching, then it will save as a new user. Okay, so what we are missing now, of course we have not done login and logout as of now, but maybe we have to also work with the messages part. Because the messages is coming in the console, right? We don't want to do that. If something goes wrong, I want to print the message there itself in the relational form. In the last video, we were able to do registration. So basically, we were sending data to the server, and then it was responsible to create a new user. And that was getting stored in the database. Everything was working. We have also done some validation where we are checking if the password, the two password which you are sending is same. We are also checking if the user is already available there. In fact, the username is exist. And same goes for email as well. But then if something goes wrong, where we are printing the error message, we are printing that in a console, right? So let's say as a user, if you are doing that stuff and if you are using a username which is already used, where do you think we should be printing that user or the message? It should be in the same form, right? In the HTML form, not on the console, because you as a user don't have the access to it. So I want to print this message which is username taken, email taken on the page. How will you do that? So first of all, I don't want to print this message like this. I don't want to say print. I want to send this data to the page. The way you can do that is by using the existing feature of Django, which is messages. So we can say messages.info, we can send the info. In fact, there are different levels here. We can send info, we can send errors. So at this point, let's say in info you have to also pass the request object, and you have to pass the message which you want to print. So here the message is username taken, that's it. But it should give you an error. Yeah, so you can see we got an error here. It says messages is not available there. The problem is, since messages is not there in the imports, we have to import it as well. But from where you will get it? So you will get it from, so we'll say from django.contrib, and you have to import messages. That's it. So now you have imported the messages. It will send the data on the client side or on the page. The same thing can be done for the email taken. Let's do that. So we'll copy and paste it here. Okay, and then here we'll say email taken. Now we are sending these messages to the page, but then nowhere in the page, if you go back to your register.html, we are not printing the message, right? We should be also printing the message. What do you think, how it will work? Now, first of all, it's very simple actually. Let's say you want to print that message after the form, or maybe I want to do that in a div tag. So here I want to print that error, and that too in a bold. Maybe bold will not, doesn't look good. So we'll go for H3. So I want to print that message in the H3 tag here. How will you print the message? Now, first of all, you are sending messages on this page. So basically you have to use that Ginger tag. So we can simply say this curly brackets and you have to say messages. But will that work? Let's try. Let's go back to our page. So let's go back to our page and say enter. I hope this server is running. The server is running. If I click on register, oh, you can see we are already seeing a message here. It says messages stored, fallback, storage. Okay, something weird is coming up. So let's print some data here so we can see Naveen Reddy. And then the email username I'm going to use here is Naveen. And the password is something and something. If I click on submit, okay, it is registered. That's weird. Okay, something is not running the way it should work. So let's use the same username here. So let's go for Kiran. I hope Kiran is already there in database. It should give me an error now. Okay, we are not getting any error. What went wrong? Let's verify if the user is getting registered, because I guess we made some mistake. Oh, we have made a mistake here. So if this thing goes wrong, we need to redirect it to the home page, right? I guess we are missing that part. So we have to return to home page only when we got the registration done. Here we need to return it to the register page again. So this was the mistake. So you have to make sure that after failing, maybe I have done some changes before the video. Let's say copy and paste here as well. Okay, so let's go back now. This time I hope this will work. We were expecting error and it should print on this page. So if I use the same username and some password, let's say this one, click on submit. So you can see it says password not matching. The given username password, okay, I have given the wrong password. So even when I give the wrong password, I should be calling the same page. Okay, so these are the changes we require here. So every time you make a mistake, you have to call the same page, right? Register page. I hope this time it should work the way we expect. Okay, so I will say Naveen Reddy, Naveen as my username again, and some weird email ID. Password is 1234, password is 1234. Click on submit, and this time you can see we got the same page, but then we are not getting the proper message there. So what is going wrong? So the problem here is, so yes, in the earlier video also we have to make these changes. So you have to make sure, I hope you are watching this video after that. So here you can see we have to print the message. So this is not the way you have to print the message. So basically messages has a lot of messages there. So we have to take one message. And for that we'll be using a loop. So for loop, what I will do is I will say curly brackets percentage, and then here let's run a loop. So we'll say for message in messages, because we have a lot of messages, and we'll pick one by one message and we'll print that if you are sending multiple messages. And here let's end the for loop. That's it. So basically we are printing all the messages which are coming up. And now let's run this code. I hope this time this will work. Okay, it says username taken. Can you see that? So now when I refresh, it says username taken, but why 3 times? Okay, let's try again and click on submit, and you can see we got the output as user taken. I don't know why it was coming 3 times. So every time you make a mistake, it will print the message there itself. And that's how you can send messages from the views to the actual page. And that's how you can display. Now you can create a good UI and you can display the message the way you want. Maybe you can have a pop-up, or you want to print the user taken just next to the username. That's your choice. So you can do the same thing for email ID. You can try that. And the same thing can be done for password. Okay, so in fact, I'm not sure if we are doing for the password. We should be doing that. So here as well, we'll be saying messages.info. And then we have to pass the request object, comma, and then you have to pass the message, which is password not matching. So that's how you can send messages from the views to the page. So I hope you got the idea how thing works here. Now we have worked with registration, and then we were also able to send the messages from the views to the page. But now, okay, so data is getting stored in the database, but now how will you log into the system? But before login, again, we'll run the code just to create a new account. And this time we'll go for, let's say Praveen Reddy, username is Praveen, email is praveen@telusko.com. And the password, let's say 0000, 4 zeros, and then same goes here. Click on submit. The moment it's done, you can see database, in the database, it should be there. Let's verify. If I say right click, view all data, And we got a user, which is, you can see we got Praveen here. So this time we'll create a login form so that we can log in from this particular account. But how will you do that? Let's go back to the IDE, and here we'll work with views now. Okay, but we don't even have a page where a user will enter username and password, so let's do that. So we'll go back to our templates. So this is where I want to create login.html. Okay, so if the moment you do that, you have to also create a form here, and let's create a simple form. But then I'm not sure if I've done with the mapping here. So in the URLs, we have not done the mapping for login. So let's do that. So we'll say path, and the path would be for login. It is views.login. We don't have that function as of now. Let's create that. And then we also need a name to it. We'll say login. We have done with the URL. In the views, we need login method for login, right? So we'll say def, and this is for login, which takes a request object. Okay, and then we'll say pass till that point. Okay, so if you go back to login.html, here we need two things, right? You will ask for username and password. So let's do that, and that too in the form. So we'll say form first and form action. And when I say action, again, I will go for login. The same thing we have done for registration, right? We have get and post. Here as well, use get and post. So this form submission should be of type post. And we have to also handle that token. Let's do that. Okay, now let's create those two fields, input type text. Now this will be your username, so I will say username, and then we also need a placeholder, username, we need a BR tag. The same thing can be reused, the only changes is the password, and the username, the name should be also password, and the placeholder will be also password. That's done. And then we also need a button here, right? So how can we miss a button? Submit, that's it. We got a form, and the moment you click on submit, it will call login. But in this views, you're not doing anything for login, right? So let's do that. In fact, what if the login is not right? Of course, you have to print the messages as well, right? We'll do that for that. In fact, we can copy the messages part from this registration page. Why to come back again? We can simply print a message, right? Okay, let's say save. It should be done. Okay, now go back to views and let's complete the login part. Now, first of all, this same function will be called for both the requests, the get request for login and the post request for login. So for get, we know what to do, right? We need to call login.jsp. And the way you can do that is, in fact, we'll check here. If the request.method is equal to post, in this case, you will fetch the data and you will check. But what if that's not the case? You will go for else part and you will call, in fact, you will render it, right? So we'll copy this code. So you will call the login.html file. That only if it is not post, right? So here we'll say login.html. Now, what if it is a post request? In that case, you will fetch the data first. Let's do that quickly. In fact, I will copy this time. Why to type every time? So I want these two things here, paste. The only change here is I don't want password 1, I just want password. That is done. I got two details. Now, how will you verify? Now, what do you think? Again, we have to file SQL query? No, because we don't do that. Here, we'll use the existing object. So we'll say user equal to. But which object? Now, if you remember, we have also imported one more thing, which is auth. So using this auth, you can verify. So you can say auth dot. So it has a function which is authenticate, which takes two parameters, of course, right? Username and password. So we'll say username equal to username and password is equal to password. So basically it is expecting these two things from you. So if the same username and password exist, it will give you the user object. That means if you got the object, it's not none. That's what you have to check. So you will check if user is not none. If that is the case, that's how you verify. If this is the wrong username and password, it will give you users none, and that's what you're checking. If it is not none, then you will say auth dot. So you have to give the login access to the user. And you will simply say login and you will pass request for which user, for the current user. That's done. And then what you will do now? So once your login is complete, which form you will call? Will you call registration? Of course not. Will you call login? No, I want to call the home page. So you will redirect. So you will say return redirect. In this case, you will call the home page by saying slash. It should be done. Okay. Else, in the else part, because I also want the else part of it, right? What if the user is not available? In this case, you will print a message. That's what you're doing, right? So you will say messages.info. In fact, you can also use messages.error. That also works. But in this case, I will use info. I will say request, comma. And here I would say invalid credentials. That's the error message you get on this screen, right? But I also want to call the same page again, because if the username is wrong, of course, you want to call the same page. So you will say return redirect, and this is where you will pass the name of the page, which is login, right? I hope the flow is clear now. So after login, it will call the home page. If the login is not right, it will call the login page again. But to make it also work, I also want to complete with registration, because see, in registration what we have done is in this, if the user is properly getting saved, I don't want to call the same page. I want to call the login page if this is done. So we'll say return. Let's go back to register in the views, and here we'll say redirect. I want to call the login page. This should work now. Let's go back here. I will say register. But what if we already have a registration here? Okay, there is something we are missing. We also need a login there, right? How will you get login here? So let's go back to index.html, and we also need a login. So we'll say copy and paste, because we have already registered. This time I want to go for login, and this will be login. Save, go back, refresh, and now you can see we also got login there. Click on login. If you got login form, that's great. I will say Praveen and 0000, that's the password. Click on submit. You see that it works. Let's do login again with a different user this time, or maybe wrong username password, which doesn't exist in a database. Click on submit. You can see we got invalid credentials. So it is working, right? But then still, how do we know it's actually working? Even if you got the home page, in this case you got the home page and the user is logged in, how will you show that the user is already logged in? Because if you are logged in, that means you should not be showing this register and login again. You should be saying hello Praveen or hello Naveen, and then you should also get the option of logout. We don't have logout as of now. So that's something we need to do in this project. Okay, we'll do it. Let me just also verify register once with a new account. I will say Badresh and Solanki. Username is BS Solanki. And then password is 1234. 1234. Click on submit. Okay, so you can see after registration, we got a login page. This is what we wanted. In fact, you can also do this. The moment someone registers, you can also do auto login. That's your choice. But we want to do this 2 steps. So I will say Solanki. And then here I will say 1234. Click on submit. It works, right? But then there is only one change. You want to change this register to register and login to the user if it is logged in. Now we are remaining with one important step, which is logout. Of course, right, when you say login and register, and after the user has done with his work, of course, you will want him to log out from the system. But how will you do that? Now, of course, you need a button there as well. So somewhere here, you need a logout button. But then having a login and logout at the same time doesn't make any sense. So either it should be login or it should be logout. In fact, you should also remove registration from there. So how will you do that? So let's do that switching first. So I will go back to my code, and here in the index.html, this is where I want to do switching. So I want to print this too. I want to show registration and login when a user is not logged in. And the moment you log in, it will remove this too, and it will give the option of logout. So basically we have to check for the conditions. So let's do a condition here. So the way you can check for the condition is very simple. You have to use a Jinja format again, right? And here we have to apply condition. So we'll say if. The way you can check that is by using user dot. And so we have a very special function here, which is underscore authenticated. So this is the inbuilt function available. You don't have to do the coding for this. Now, if the user is authenticated, if it returns true, in this case, that means you are logged in. At this point, I want to show logout. So we can just copy this code and paste it here. Okay, so this should be logout. Okay, but then before logout, I also want to print the name of the user who is using the system, right? So it should be hello Naveen and then logout option. So how will you do that? How will you get logout here? So again, I want a list, and then here I will print hello and the name. How will I get the name? I can't simply say Naveen because it doesn't matter who logins. Everyone will get the same name. We don't want that. We just want it to be dynamic. And that's why I will fetch it from the user. So I will say user dot, let's print first name. Why do you print username? Yeah. So it will print the first name. So it will say hello Naveen, hello Praveen, something like that. So this will be printed when you are logged in. But what if you're not logged in? So in this case, you will use else part here. So we'll say else. Else will execute this part. And then we also have to end that if condition. So we'll say end if. That's it, I guess. Let's verify. Let's refresh. And you can see I'm already logged in, and that's why it shows the name to it. So you can see it says hello Badresh because that's what we have done. And then you can click on logout, so it will perform the logout operation. The moment you click on logout, it should give you the same page, but with the help of login option. The moment you do that, we got an error. It's because we have not done with the logout part yet. So the way you can do that, oh, we have made one mistake. It should not be capital logout, it should be small one. Okay, so basically we have to do the mapping first. In the URLs, we have to say path, we have to also handle logout now. We'll say logout, and here we'll say views.logout, comma, name is... Okay, that's the thing we need here, but we don't have a function which is logout in this case. Let's do that. Let's do it here at the end. So we'll say def logout, which takes a request object, colon, and here we just have to log out, okay? Now you might be thinking that there will be multiple steps to do that. Actually not, you can simply say auth, the same object, and auth.logout, in bracket you just have to pass the request object, and your job is done. You have basically logged out the user from the system. But then after logging out, I want to call the homepage again. So you will say return redirect, and this is where you will call the homepage. Done. Let's verify. Let's go back to the page. So you can see we are logged out. No, so you can see the user is logged in. Click on logout. We got the homepage and it says register and login. I will say login again, and this time it will ask you for the name. I will log in from Naveen and submit. You can see I'm logged in, but my name is not getting printed. Maybe the data is not stored in database properly. Let's go back. Let's use a different account which will work properly. I will say Praveen U000, submit, and you can see we got hello Praveen. So maybe my name is not stored in the first name section of database, but Praveen and Pradesh is working. So that's how you can simply have login, registration, and logout. In fact, you can have one more thing. Let's say anyone can access the home page when someone comes here. What if you don't want to log in and still you want to explore? You can. The moment you click on Pune, let's say we have a page which will show the details about Pune, but I don't want anyone to see the Pune page if you are not logged in. So it should call the login page automatically. And that is something I want you to complete. I know we have not done that and we will not be doing that. That's my plan. But what you can do is create a page for Pune, in fact for all the cities. Call the specific page based on what request you are sending, and then before showing that page, you have to check if the user is logged in or not. If the user is logged in, you have to show that page, otherwise you have to show the login page. That's your assignment. So that's it from this video where we have talked about all this stuff, in fact, login, logout, and registration. Now that's the first section of Django. Okay, that's the end of the first section. I will try to make some more videos in future, but that's not something was planned before. I was planning for the basic course and that's done. So I hope you enjoyed the series till now. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.